Chapter 64. Chen Zhizhong's pupils shrunk and his eyes widened. The sharp pain made him blacked out, and he almost fainted on the ground. He was confused and didn't understand. Tan Xiao said that he wanted to help heal him, but why did he attack him? Moreover, his strength was so strong that he almost fainted. Endure it even if it's painful. Tan Xiao moved his feet and instantly stood behind Chen Zhizhong. His fists heavily punched several times, all hitting Chen Zhizhong's back. Immediately after, he spread his 5 fingers. His thumb pressed on the Shentang acupoint, his middle finger on the Juyinshu acupoint, and his little finger on the Jiang acupoint. Open for me. His fingers twisted, and his other fist once again hit Chen Zhizhong's back. As Chen Zhizhong screamed halfway, he spurted out a mouthful of black blood. Tan Xiao paused for a few seconds, and then circled to Chen Zhizhong's front. His thumb accurately pressed on the Tanzhong acupoint on Chen Zhizhong's chest. After 3 presses, his palm turned into a fist, and his strength was reduced by 30%, hitting Chen Zhizhong's chest again. Cough, cough. Blood spurted out from his mouth, but the blood he spurted this time was much redder than before. Fall down. Tan Xiao used his toes to pick Chen Zhizhong's heel. As his legs were lifted up, his body heavily fell backward. However, Tan Xiao's eyes and hands were quick. He instantly grabbed one of his arms. Due to his absolute strength, Chen Zhizhong didn't suffer any injuries, and then lay flat on the ground. Qilin bone. White tiger vein. Flying ape arm. Tan Xiao's hands constantly searched Chen Zhizhong's body. His face gradually revealed a surprised look as he said again, "It's a pity to have a cultivation body. Without a peerless cultivation technique, and a powerhouse to guide you, you've now fallen to the level of an ant. What a pity." With that said, he suddenly raised his hands, and then slapped Chen Zhizhong's chest. His slaps were very rhythmic, sometimes as clear as a bird's cry, and sometimes as dull as a drum. Gradually, blood-red lines appeared on Chen Zhizhong's chest that was slapped red. These lines undulated like flowing water. At the side, Long Hanwen was tongue-tied as he looked at the scene in front of him. If it weren't for his sanity, perhaps he would have thought that he was dreaming. Chen Zhizhong was almost beaten up by Tan Xiao. What kind of treatment was this? Chen Zhizhong was already seriously injured. If he continued to fight like this, would he be beaten to death? He wanted to stop her, but when he thought of Tan Xiao's words, he could only bury his worry deep in his heart. Time ticked by. 10 minutes later, Cheng Xuemei appeared outside the door. At this moment, Tang Xuemei's complexion was ice cold. She looked at the 4 tall and straight security guards in front of her, and spoke in a deep voice. "I'm Cheng Xuemei from the City Criminal Police Unit. Due to the needs of the case, I want to find Tan Xiao to understand the situation. As far as I know, Tan Xiao should be in this house. Please move aside. Sorry, we received orders from the boss that no one is allowed to enter." Cheng Xuemei angrily said, "It's every citizen's duty to cooperate with the police to investigate the case. I don't care who your boss is, but please move aside. Otherwise, you will be obstructing the police from handling the case, and will be punished by the law." "I'm sorry." The ice-cold voice was the response to her. "What's going on?" Long Jingyu arrived in time. He looked at Cheng Xuemei and the other 2 criminal police unit members, before he turned to look at the security guards and asked. Cheng Xuemei said, "Are you Long Jingyu? Do you know me?" Long Jingyu was surprised. Cheng Xuemei lightly said, "You're a famous star entrepreneur in Star City, the successor of the new generation of business. You've appeared in many financial magazines. How could I not know you? I'm Cheng Xuemei from the City Criminal Police Unit. I'm looking for Tan Xiao to understand something. I'll have to trouble you to ask them to move aside." Long Jingyu forced a smile and said, "Captain Cheng, is it? I'm really sorry, but Tan Xiao is currently inconvenient to meet guests. If it's possible, I hope you can wait for a moment. I'll go inside and inform him." "What?" Cheng Xuemei was stunned. Never in her dreams did she think that she would need someone to inform Tan Xiao if she wanted to see him. And this person turned out to be the famous Long family's young master in Star City. Could it be? Was there really a loophole in the previous investigation on Tan Xiao? Could it be that his identity was more powerful than Long Jingyu's? He even let Long Jingyu stand guard at his door? Long Jingyu pushed the door and entered. But a moment later, he turned around and walked out. What happened? Cheng Xuemei frowned and asked. Long Jingyu said, It's really inconvenient for Tan Xiao to meet guests now. Please wait for a moment. Inside the room, after the last slap, Tan Xiao's finger pressed on Chen Jizhong's Tianshu acupoint. After waiting for a few seconds, he loosened his finger and heaved a deep sigh of relief. How do you feel? Tan Xiao looked at Chen Jizhong, whose body was twitching but had not fainted. Chen Jizhong opened his mouth, but his voice seemed to be blocked in his throat. His body twitched even more violently. His skin looked as though it had just been boiled as it turned red. Soon, traces of grayish-black impurities were discharged from every pore of his body at a speed visible to the naked eye. He struggled to sit up and immediately sat cross-legged, slowly closing his eyes. Half an hour later, Chen Jizhong opened his eyes as a glint flashed in his eyes. His body gently jumped up and directly jumped up. It was as though the shackles on his body had been removed, making him feel very comfortable. My injuries. After a dazed expression, he was immediately overjoyed. He found that not only had his internal injuries healed, but he had also broken through the third stage of his cultivation technique that he had been unable to break through. The boiling blood and qi all over his body gave him a comfortable feeling, making him feel as though he had suddenly become 10 years younger. Thank you, Mr. Tang. Chen Jizhong calmed himself down and cupped his fists with a bit of respect in his eyes. Tan Xiao waved his hand and said, Go take a bath. I think you'll have to help me later. Chen Jizhong stared blankly for a moment before he nodded and walked outside. Just as Chen Jizhong walked out of the door, a bit of confusion could be seen in Cheng Xuemei's eyes. She faintly felt that this stinky and dirty man in front of her was somewhat familiar. Little you, let them come in. Long Hanwen's voice came from the room. Cheng Xuemei glanced at Long Jingyu and strode into the room. Her gaze swept over Long Hanwen, and she immediately recognized his identity. She also understood why Long Jingyu was guarding the door outside. Finally, Cheng Xuemei's eyes fell on Tan Xiao. Seeing Tan Xiao leisurely sitting on the sofa and drinking tea, she walked a few steps forward and said with a deep voice, Tan Xiao, we meet again. Captain Cheng, is it? Tan Xiao said. Why are you looking for me? Haven't you already investigated the previous case? I was trying to save someone, so I accidentally killed the fugitive who broke into the school. Tan Xiao, don't play dumb with me. Cheng Xuemei coldly snorted and said, You're the one who committed the murder in the abandoned auto repair shop on Deep Red Cloud Street in Peaceful Serene District, right? Tan Xiao pretended to be confused and said, Captain Cheng, to catch an adulterer, you must catch both. What does a murder case in a small area have to do with me? You're a cop. You should know the consequences of slander. Cheng Xuemei was flustered. Tan Xiao's accusation made her somewhat at a loss. However, she was, after all, an elite of the criminal police unit, so she quickly adjusted her mentality. After organizing the words in her mind, she said with a sinking tone, Tan Xiao, I made a slip of the tongue. I hope you don't mind. I just want to ask, why did you suddenly disappear in the past few days? Where were you a few hours ago? Tan Xiao said indifferently, I have something to do these days, so I've been at home in Southgate Town. A few hours ago, I was at home. How can you prove it? Someone can help me prove it, because I've been with him. Who? Chen Jizhong. Cheng Xuemei frowned. She felt that the name was somewhat familiar, but she couldn't remember where she had heard it. She opened her mouth and was about to speak again. But the face of the man who just left the room suddenly appeared in her mind. That man was the Endless Virtue Pharmaceuticals' big boss, Chen Jizhong. 10 minutes later, Chen Jizhong took a shower and returned to his room with a clean set of clothes he got from God knows where. Boss Chen, can you prove that Tan Xiao was with you in the past 3 or 4 hours? Cheng Xuemei asked. Chen Jizhong said with a smile, Yeah, Tang Bingyao was indeed with me. Speaking of which, he's really amazing. I have a problem with my body, and he can help me treat it. Recently, I've been coming to Southgate Town almost every day to let Tang Bingyao treat me. This? Cheng Xuemei found that her guess was completely wrong. Tan Xiao had a witness to prove that he was in Southgate Town a few hours ago. and not at the scene of the abandoned auto repair shop on Deep Red Cloud Road in the peaceful Serene district. This meant that he didn't have the time to commit the crime. Tan Xiao Boss Chen, thank you for your cooperation. We still have something to do, so we won't bother you anymore. Tan Xiao's expression was calm as he watched Cheng Xuemei and the other two leave. Then, he picked up the teacup again and gently took a sip. This incident made him think clearly about one thing. If he were to do something later, especially when dealing with the police, he must think of a way out in advance. Chen Zhizhong and Long Hanwen didn't ask what Tan Xiao did, but they had made up their mind to send someone to investigate it later. Plop! The moment the door was closed, Chen Zhizhong knelt in front of Tan Xiao. Brother Chen, what are you doing? Long Hanwen looked at Chen Zhizhong with a dumbfounded expression as he involuntarily exclaimed. Chen Zhizhong didn't pay attention to Long Hanwen. With a fanatical look in his eyes, he respectfully said, Mr. Tang, I've never heard of your martial arts realm. You've cured my internal injuries, so you can be considered as my savior. So please accept me as your disciple benefactor. What? Long Hanwen was stunned as he looked at Chen Zhizhong with an incredulous expression. It was as if the person in front of him was not his old friend of decades, but a stranger. What kind of joke was this? He was the dignified Endless Virtue Pharmaceuticals big boss, a billionaire with assets of billions of yuan. Yet he wanted to worship a high school student as his master? Was he Chen Zhizhong crazy? Or had the world gone crazy? Chapter 65. Tan Xiao's expression turned cold as he looked at Chen Zhizhong, who was kneeling in front of him. In his opinion, even if Chen Zhizhong worshipped him as his master, he wouldn't be able to achieve much in this lifetime. At most, he would barely be able to ascend and become an immortal. Once, how many powerful immortals in the immortal world were willing to break their heads just to worship him as their master? But in the end, he had only casually accepted a few talented registered disciples. I won't. Tan Xiao coldly refused. He then stood up and looked at Long Hanwen saying, Uncle Long, I still have other things to do, so I'll go back first. Long Hanwen looked at Tan Xiao with a strange expression. He then looked at Chen Zhizhong, who was kneeling on the floor. The corner of his mouth fiercely twitched a few times as he forced a smile and said, All right. You can go ahead if you have something to do. Remember to come to our house with little Yu and little Lin to have a meal later. Tan Xiao nodded. He then greeted Long Zhengyu and directly left. Dad, I'm going to see off Tan Xiao. Long Zhengyu, who was shocked to the point that it was hard for him to recover, hurriedly said. In the room, only Long Hanwen and Chen Zhizhong were left. With an ashen face, Chen Zhizhong slowly stood up. With a disappointed expression, he silently sat back on the sofa. Long Hanwen forced a smile and said, Brother Chen, why are you doing this? Even if Tan Xiao is very powerful, he shouldn't make you kneel and worship him as your master, right? Chen Zhizhong shook his head and said with a bitter expression, Brother Long, you don't understand. My biggest hobby in life is practicing martial arts. When I was young, I was famous for being obsessed with martial arts. Later, because my family was poor, I started my own business. But my love for martial arts didn't reduce at all. Instead, the older I got, the more obsessed I became. Mr. Tang is really powerful, to the point that I admire him. Long Hanwen curiously said, Didn't Tan Xiao say before? His strength is not as good as yours. Long Hanwen curiously asked. Chen Zhizhong shook his head and said, You're wrong. His strength is definitely above me. Do you remember the scene when he treated me? His moves were extremely fast, and his power control was extremely precise. Can you guess what the most important thing is? What is it? Long Hanwen was confused. Chen Zhizhong replied in a deep voice. I'm cultivating an internal cultivation technique passed down in my family, and I've already broken through to the second stage more than a decade ago. But no matter how hard I tried, I was never able to break through to the third level. Not only did Mr. Tang heal my internal injuries and save my life, but he also gave me great benefits when he was treating me. Just now, after I was cured, I discovered that I had already broken through to the third realm. Hiss, Long Hanwen was shocked. Chen Zhizhong had been stuck in the second realm for more than 10 years, and had not broken through. but because of Tan Xiu's help, he had broken through just like that? Chen Jizhong spoke again. Brother Long, you don't know what it means to break through from the second stage to the third stage of my cultivation technique. Let's put it this way. My current strength is several times stronger than before Mr. Tang treated me. As he spoke, he slowly squatted down and punched the ground. Boom! Broken tiles flew in all directions, and an inch-deep pit appeared on the flat and solid ground. Chen Jizhong's fist, however, didn't have the slightest injury. Long Hanwen suddenly jumped up from the sofa, as if he had seen an alien. He exclaimed in shock. How is this possible? Your strength, Chen Jizhong said with a solemn expression. For example, if my previous punching strength was 100 pounds, then my current punching strength is at least 300 pounds. My strength will also advance by leaps and bounds along with my future cultivation. Brother Long, now you understand how big of a fortune Mr. Tang has given me, right? Long Hanwen nodded with a dumbfounded expression. After a long while, he realized that he had received too many shocks today. Inside the villa in Southgate Town, after returning home, Tan Xiu went straight to the bedroom on the second floor. Standing on the balcony of the bedroom, Tan Xiu looked at the picturesque scenery of the villa complex. He then took out his mobile and opened the phone book with the name Kongxia. His thumb stroked the dialing button, but he didn't press it. A thoughtful expression flashed in his eyes as he pondered about how to gain the trust of this legendary figure in the business world, and how to make her work for him. As for Kongxia's information, Long Jingyu had also given him her contact information. Therefore, he had a general understanding of Kongxia's situation. Indifferent and stubborn, she has a deep adventurous spirit and likes to take the unconventional path. She has an accurate grasp of timing, and once the timing is right, she will act decisively. Tan Xiu recalled the information about Kongxia in his mind as a smile gradually appeared on his face. Immediately after, his thumb pressed the dialing button. A few seconds after the ringtone sounded, the call was connected. Kongxia speaking. Who's this? Tan Xiu looked at the beautiful scenery outside and said, I'm Tan Xiu. You may not have heard of me, but I'm a straightforward person. The reason why I'm looking for you is very simple. I'm ready to give you a path to strive for in the future. Are you interested? At the other end of the phone, Kongxia was silent for more than 10 seconds before she slowly said, To be honest, you used the simplest words to arouse my curiosity. Tell me, what path can you give me? Before I tell you, you need to answer a question of mine, said Tan Xiu. If there are two kinds of cosmetics, one of which has a strong whitening and moisturizing effect that can enhance a woman's skin, even those high-end whitening products in society can't compare to 1/10 of its effect. What do you think will happen once this kind of cosmetics enters the market and accepts the test of the mass market? The second one can repair scars and also has the effect of removing acne and freckles. Listen carefully, it's the real effect, which can also be called the curative effect. Once this kind of product enters the market and accepts the test of the mass market, what do you think will happen? Imperial City, in a high-end resort. Kongxia, who had a devilish figure and an angelic face, was wearing a sexy bikini. She was sitting alone on a recliner in a large swimming pool. She was wiping her wet long hair, while holding a mobile phone in one hand. Her expression was slightly solemn. It was completely different from her indifferent appearance when she wanted to hang up the phone. It seemed to be two questions, but it was actually the same question. She wanted to say that if these two kinds of cosmetics really had the same effect as the other party said, once they entered the market and accepted the test of the mass market, it would definitely cause a huge sensation in today's society. Even the business would be so good that it would explode. But would these two kinds of cosmetics really exist in this world? Kongxia didn't know, but she was a woman with keen insight towards opportunities. This time she was silent for a long time. After 2 minutes she slowly said, Caller ID, your number is from Star City. I'll give you 2 days to send the samples of these two cosmetics to me. We'll talk again after I've tested the effect. I think if you can get my phone number, you should be able to get my address too. Tan Xiu said indifferently. I don't like being told what to do. If it's someone I want to use, I won't be bossy and bossy once I give them the power. I want to do business, but I don't have much time to pay attention to business. I think with your IQ, you should be able to understand what I mean. Alright, that's it. I'll wait for you in Star City. Contact me when you arrive. After saying that, Tan Xiao directly hung up the phone. Inside the Imperial City Resort swimming complex, Kang Xia stared blankly at the busy tone coming from her mobile. She couldn't believe that the other party had hung up the phone. Who was she? She was Kang Xia. Countless people fawned and flattered her. They couldn't wait to pursue her, and couldn't wait to use her as a business elite. In the past, she was always the one who took the initiative to hang up other people's phone. How come the tables had turned, and it was someone else who hung up her phone? Was that person's brain not working well? Or did her charm value plummet? It seemed like did he beg her? Kang Xia was somewhat angry out of shame. She casually threw her mobile on the coffee table next to the recliner. Her mind couldn't help but recall that person's words. Very arrogant. Very arrogant. Kang Xia evaluated the other party twice, and silently pondered over the issue. She didn't know whether this was an opportunity or not. If it was, she believed that once she grabbed it, she would definitely shock everyone. But if not, she was afraid that she would be fooled. Tan Xiao. Star City's Tan Xiao? Kang Xia grabbed her mobile again. After dialing a cell number, she spoke with a deep tone. Andy, help me investigate a person. I only have 5 clues. His name, he's in Star City, he's a man, he's very arrogant, and his mobile number. How long do you need to give me the answer? A day. A charming voice came from the phone. Kang Xia said, half a day. Southgate Town. Tan Xiao hung up the phone, and called Han Qinggu and Yuan Chuling respectively. Yuan Chuling was fine since his mother had been saved. He only asked if the person who saved his mother was Tan Xiao, but Tan Xiao just brushed him off. As for Han Qinggu, Tan Xiao found it a bit troublesome to deal with her. In fact, he felt somewhat helpless inside, as well as an inexplicable feeling. After all, Han Qinggu was very similar to the woman he met in the immortal world. He had an indescribable feeling toward her. On the phone, he apologized and promised that he would go to school the next day. After being severely criticized, he was temporarily forgiven. After dealing with all the matters, Tan Xiao recalled Chen Jizhong's experience. He found a precious medicinal herb in the medicinal herbs market. Since it's still early today, how about I go to the medicinal herbs market? Tan Xiao was a resolute person. The moment this thought emerged, he immediately made a decision. He took out the hundreds of thousands of cash he got from the Slayer today, put it back into his bag, and immediately started. Although he had promised to give the one-eyed woman's grandmother a sum of money, now was not the time. He was short of money at the moment, so he had to use it now. Grumble, grumble. Suddenly Tan Xiao froze. A grumbling sound came from his stomach, as if reminding him that he hadn't eaten breakfast and lunch today. Chapter 66. Tan Xiao liked the feeling of hunger. It made him feel like he had the smell of fireworks. He remembered when he was in the immortal world. He didn't need to eat at all. Usually, if he wanted to eat something, he would taste the rare and precious fruits. 7 emotions and 6 desires. 5 grains and miscellaneous grains. The smell of life in the secular world made him somewhat intoxicated. The most perfect thing was because he now had his mother. 10,000 years of regret was made up today, and he especially cherished it. After a moment, Tan Xiao left the villa and strolled on the tree-lined trail with birdsong and fragrant flowers. He enjoyed the tranquil atmosphere in the surroundings, and his mood was tranquil. Southgate Town was indeed worthy of being one of the most luxurious villas in Star City. Every security guard he met would stop and salute him to show their respect. Money makes the world go round. Tan Xiao quietly savored this sentence. The more he thought about it, the more he felt that it made sense. Today's society was very different from the immortal world. In the immortal world, the strong were respected, but in this society, wealth and power were respected. Hello, Mr. Tang. The tall and good-looking property manager, Long Shuiyao, happened to pass by and greeted Tan Xiao with a smiling face. Tan Xiao nodded with a smile. After walking a few steps, He suddenly remembered the sanitation issue of the house. He immediately stopped Long Shuiyao and asked, "Manager Long, I have something to ask you." Long Shuiyao said with a smile, "Please say it, Mr. Tang." Tan Xiao helplessly said, "Manager Long, does the property management office in Southgate Town have a sanitation service? I want to hire someone to clean it regularly." Long Shuiyao said, "Our community does have a sanitation service, but you need to pay an additional fee. Actually, I suggest Mr. Tang to hire a few maids. After all, there will be a lot of precious items in your house. Although the property management office's cleaning staff will do their job, accidents are inevitable." Tan Xiao said, "Hiring maids will have to wait for a while. So be it. You send someone to help me clean it first. I'll give you the fee now." After saying that, Tan Xiao took out a stack of 100 yuan bills from his bag and directly handed it to Long Shuiyao. Long Shuiyao strangely looked at Tan Xiao. She did not expect that Tan Xiao would actually carry so much cash with him. This stack of 100 yuan bills, she estimated that it should be 10,000 yuan. Moreover, when Tan Xiao was withdrawing money from the bag, her sharp eyes caught that there were many stacks of 100 yuan bills in it. "Weirdo," Long Shuiyao secretly muttered in her heart. In this day and age, no matter how rich one was, very few people carried so much cash with them. With the development of the times, the credit card business had become more and more popular, and it had been popularized by the people of the country. "Mr. Tang, you don't need to give me money now. When you pay the property fees every month, our management office will calculate it and report the total amount and details to you." Tan Xiao thought about it and nodded. "All right then. You let the cleaning staff clean once every 2 or 3 days. I still have something to do, so I'll take my leave first." "Take care, Mr. Tang." Long Shuiyao calmly looked at Tan Xiao's back as a thoughtful expression flashed in her eyes. She was very curious about Tan Xiao, because the most expensive King View villa in Southgate Town was reserved by her cousin Long Jingyu. Even the interior decoration was specially designed by her cousin, and all the materials used were the best. But why did her cousin give that villa to this young man? Southgate Town. Because it occupied a large area. It took Tan Xiao a lot of time to go out. Near Southgate Town, there was a bustling commercial street with rows and rows of shops with a dazzling lineup of goods. Each of the shops belonged to the high-end level. Just as Tan Xiao stepped into this commercial street, he smelled the fragrance of food floating in the air. He walked forward and scanned the area with his eyes. Soon, he saw the restaurant that was decorated in an antique style. The plaque was engraved with 3 big characters, "Drunk in Immortal Abode," which looked vigorous and powerful. After entering the door, Tan Xiao sat down in front of the table and chair by the window. After the waiter brought him the menu, he casually ordered 2 dishes and a main course, and then quietly waited. Humph! Tan Xiao's eyes, through the glass window, keenly caught a few youths who were sneaking around at the far end of the street. After leaving Southgate Town, he was aware that a pair of eyes were staring at him. That feeling was very strong. However, in order not to beat the grass and alert the snake, and in order to determine the identity of the other party, he didn't look around. Instead, he came here and used the corner of his eyes to observe. He was a bit worried. He was worried that some of the murderers he killed had slipped through the net. He was not afraid of retaliation, but it was easy to dodge a spear in the open. But it was hard to guard against a stab in the dark. He was afraid that those remnants would retaliate against his mother, just like how they retaliated against Yuan Chuling by kidnapping his mother. At the end of the street, Scarfacely was leaning against the corner, smoking a cigarette as he observed Tan Xiao in the drunken immortal abode. He had arrived at Southgate Town half an hour ago, and the reason was that he had been paid to eliminate disasters. He didn't know how many times he had done this kind of thing. "Big brother, why didn't we act just now? Looking at that brat's appearance, I can knock him over by myself." A youth with dyed blonde hair asked with a puzzled expression. "Yeah, when that brat left Southgate Town, we had the chance to clean him up. Why didn't we act?" Another robust youth asked. Scarfacely sneered and said, "You two are too impatient. In our line of work, it's better to be safe than sorry. When young Master Gu contacted me today, He told me that this brat's identity is a bit unusual. We can't fail miserably in an easy task. The blonde said without taking it seriously. Big brother, young Master Gu just told us to break his legs. Let's just swarm up and directly cripple him, and then leave immediately. Star City is so big. I'm afraid that he won't even know who hit him after he's been beaten. Shut up. Scarface Lee fiercely slapped the blonde's face and said with a gloomy expression, remember this. Carelessness will only make us miserable. You've been following me in this line of work for a few years. And I think you all know that standing on the riverbank will make your shoes wet. I don't want your brothers to be implicated because of your carelessness. Big Tiger, ask Xiao Chong where they are. Upon seeing Scarface Lee's anger, the robust youth suddenly jumped up in fright and quickly contacted according to Scarface Lee's instructions. Quickly, he hung up the phone and said, Big brother, Xiao Chong and the others will arrive soon. Scarface Lee nodded and said, we'll wait for Xiao Chong and the others to arrive. Then we'll find the right time to act. With more than a dozen people suddenly attacking that brat, even if he has 3 heads and 6 arms, he won't be able to escape the fate of having his legs broken. Yes, yes. The robust youth nodded again and again. On the roof of a nearby 3-story building, Gu Yuetao was holding a pair of binoculars as he stood on the edge of the building. Next to him was a middle-aged man with glasses and a briefcase. Young Master Gu, we haven't clearly investigated the other party's background, yet we rashly sent people to act. Isn't it too hasty? I always feel that he can live in Southgate Town, not only because of his relationship with Long Jingyu, but perhaps there's something special about him. The middle-aged man hesitated. Gu Yuetao sneered and said, He gang, how come we haven't clearly investigated that brat's background? It's just that his gambling skills are good, and the house was given to him by Long Jingyu. Also, his family background is that he's a country bumpkin from the countryside. Moreover, he's a high school student from Xingqing City No. 1 High School. Besides, Scarface Lee is a man who knows the rules. Even if he fails, he won't sell me out. He gang was silent for a moment before he finally nodded silently. He also felt that he was being overly cautious. He was very clear about Gu Yuetao's identity and background. Not only was Gu Yuetao's father the city's first secretary, but his mother also managed a company with hundreds of millions of assets. And he was Gu Yuetao's mother's secretary. Inside the drunken Immortal House restaurant, Tan Xiu was sitting alone by the window, quietly tasting the dishes of the drunken Immortal House. For him, the taste of the dishes was very ordinary. It was simply incomparable to the delicacies he had eaten in the immortal world, and the bejeweled nectar he drank. Not to mention that he was once a grandmaster chef, and his culinary skills had reached the pinnacle. Ring, ring, ring. His cell phone's ringtone suddenly sounded. Tan Xiu took out his cell phone and looked at the caller ID. He pressed the answer button and lightly said, Tan Xiu speaking, who's this? Grandmaster Tang. I'm Jia Ruidao's eldest apprentice Gong Dalong. Can you spare some time for us to meet? I've arrived at Star City. Tan Xiu angrily said. I told you, I don't have time. After saying that, he directly hung up the phone. For Tan Xiu, he didn't like professional gamblers like Jia Ruidao. To be honest, Jia Ruidao's gambling skills were indeed very powerful. However, there would always be someone better than him in the world. And there would always be someone higher than him. If one day, Jia Ruidao were to encounter someone more powerful than him, then perhaps his fate would be very miserable. Furthermore, once a gambler's eyes turned red from losing, it would definitely be a terrible thing. They would lose their reason and recklessly lose everything. In a light case, they would lose their family's wealth, and in a heavy case, their lives would be in danger. Gamblers are just a bunch of people who are like snakes trying to swallow an elephant. Greed is the original sin. Tan Xiu couldn't help but curse inwardly. The food he was eating became even more tasteless. Ring, ring, ring. That phone number just now was calling back persistently. A chilling light flashed in Tan Xiu's eyes. He was silent for a few seconds before he put down the chopsticks in his hand. He pressed the answer button again and spoke with a sinking tone. I told you that I'm disgusted with gambling. Furthermore, my friendship with Jia Ruidao has yet to reach the point where I can stand up for him from 1,000 miles away. I'm warning you, if you dare to harass me again, you'll have to bear the consequences. Grandmaster Tang, I understand what you mean, but can you listen to what I have to say? My master is old, and has long intended to retire from the gambling circle. This incident is completely caused by my junior brother. My junior brother is Master's son, so Master has no choice but to act. Furthermore, I know that your friendship with Master has yet to reach the point where he needs your help. But I still want to ask you to help him. If Grandmaster Tang is willing to help, I'll give all my assets to you. It's not a lot, only tens of millions of yuan. Also, if you help my master this time, we master and disciple will owe you a huge favor. If Grandmaster Tang has any errands for us, we, master and disciple, will be the first to rush over even if we are at the ends of the earth. Chapter 67. As Tan Xiu quietly listened to Gong Dalong's words, the chill in his eyes gradually dissipated. He could feel Gong Dalong's sincerity from his tone, as well as his concern for his master Jiarui Dao. Money. He didn't care much about it. Money was just an auxiliary resource for his cultivation, not to mention tens of millions of assets. Even if it was more, it was not impossible for him to earn it. Filial piety. What he cared about was Gong Dalong's filial piety. As the saying goes, filial piety is the most important of all virtues. Being kind and filial piety was the bottom line of a person, the cornerstone of morality. Gong Dalong's character was something that Tan Xiu really valued. A gentleman's words were hard to retract, and he valued Gong Dalong's promise. Where are you? Star City Airport. Tan Xiu said. I'll go to Star City Medicinal Herbs Market later. Call me when you arrive. The call ended. Tan Xiu received a call from Long Jinglin. Long Jinglin's tone was very excited. Apparently, he knew what Tan Xiu had done today. After inquiring that Tan Xiu was having a meal at Drunken Immortal Tavern, he hurriedly hung up the phone and rushed over to meet with Tan Xiu. Soon, Tan Xiu had a simple meal, paid the bill and left Drunken Immortal Tavern. He originally wanted to stop a taxi after the meal and directly take a taxi to Star City Medicinal Herbs Market. But those people who were monitoring him made him feel like a fishbone stuck in his throat. If he didn't solve this trouble, he would never feel at ease. Tan Xiu casually identified the direction and walked toward the distance. At the same time, he used his divine sense to observe those people who were following him. When he entered Drunken Immortal Tavern to eat, he observed that there were only 3 people following him, but now the number suddenly increased to 14. However, what made him feel a little relieved was that those people following him had weak footsteps and sloppy walking, completely like street thugs. If they were the same kind of people as the ones he had killed, he would have to be extremely vigilant. But if they were street thugs, he could easily solve them. 10 minutes later, Tan Xiu turned into a remote road. There were few people here. Compared to the bustling commercial street, this place was less noisy and more quiet. Behind him, Scarfacely was overjoyed. He didn't expect that after finishing his meal, Tan Xiu didn't return to Southgate Town but came here. This was a heaven-sent opportunity. Chase after him. Following Scarfacely's order, more than a dozen young men scattered around him rushed toward Tan Xiu. In order to prevent Tan Xiu from escaping, some of them even took a detour to another path, preparing to block Tan Xiu's escape route. Who are you people? Tan Xiu was surrounded, but his expression was as cold as ice. Scarfacely narrowed his eyes. He didn't immediately order his men to attack. Instead, he sized up Tan Xiu. At this moment, he also had some misgivings in his heart. In the past, when he ganged up on others and beat them up, they would always reveal nervous and fearful expressions. However, the young boy before him was not afraid at all, and was unusually calm. It seems that this little guy is indeed not simple. No wonder he can become Gu Yuetao's enemy. Scarfacely turned his head and looked at the gang of brothers around him. He then said with a sinking tone, "When you attack, if he doesn't resist, you only need to break his legs." Good. A group of young thugs revealed a hideous grin as they rushed toward Tan Xiu. Tan Xiu's eyes were like torches, and his moves were as fast as lightning. The first 2 young thugs who rushed in front of him were sent flying upside down by his straight fists. The moment he turned around and kicked, another young thug was also sent flying. Even that young thug's body smashed several of his companions behind him to the ground. Bang! Bang! In just half a minute, Tang Xiu had beaten down the 13 young bullies who participated in the fight. For Tang Xiu, these young thugs were simply embroidered pillows. However, he didn't directly kill them after he determined that they weren't from the same gang as those thugs. He wasn't afraid of killing people, but he didn't want to add unnecessary trouble to himself. Moreover, he had already faintly guessed who hired these thugs to deal with him. However, the conclusion still needed to be proven. Scarface Lee's stiff body froze on the spot. After more than 10 seconds, he raised his arm with difficulty and rubbed his eyes to make sure that he wasn't hallucinating. 13 brothers. 13 brothers were so easily beaten down? Although they hadn't gone through any special training and didn't have any foundation in martial arts, they had fought countless times with him. Their fighting experience was very rich. How could this be? How could this bastard named Tang Xiu be so powerful? Scarface Lee subconsciously retreated 2 steps. His eyes were filled with fear as he stared at Tang Xiu. He had practiced martial arts. He could fight 3 or 4 people at once, but it would take some effort. If he were to fight 13 people at once, perhaps he would be beaten down in minutes. An expert. This Tang Xiu was definitely an expert among experts. He had never come across such a strong expert. On the roof of a nearby 3-story building, Gui Wetao and he gang adjusted their position so that they could clearly see the distant path. They held binoculars and stood at the edge of the building. They were dumbfounded as they looked at the 13 youths who were beaten down by Tang Xiu. Is he possessed by the god of war? How could someone be so powerful? A single person can actually beat 13 thugs who often fight, rely on others' protection fees, and take care of people's business so miserably? Gui Wetao involuntarily exclaimed. He gang's mouth fiercely twitched a few times. He secretly suppressed the fear in his heart and bitterly said, "Even if he's not possessed by the god of war, I'm afraid he's not far from it. It's too terrifying. He alone can beat down 13 people. Is he still a human?" Gui Wetao's complexion was faintly pale. He had previously sent someone to investigate Tang Xiu's information. The result of the investigation was that Tang Xiu came from an ordinary family. He had a car accident and had turned from a learning genius into an idiot. Although he seemed to be showing signs of recovery recently, it was nothing to worry about. In addition, Tang Xiu seemed to have no other ability apart from his gambling skill, which made Long Jingyu treat him favorably. But how could the situation be reversed like this? "Young Master Gu, what should we do now?" He gang suppressed the fear in his heart and asked in a low voice. Gu Yuetao's complexion alternated between green and white. After 10 seconds he gnashed his teeth and said fiercely, "Even if he can fight, so what? He could beat up 13 hooligans. But could he beat down 13 martial arts masters? What if there are dozens of martial arts experts?" "Humph." He gang was surprised. "Young Master Gu you want to find?" Gu Yuetao sneered. "That's right. Those people of the Golden Rock Security Company are usually very idle. I'm afraid Vice President Lu wants to earn some extra money." He gang hesitated. "Young Master Gu, I'm afraid it will cost a lot to invite the people of the Golden Rock Security Company. In case this matter is known by the general manager," Gu Yuetao said with a deep voice, "I don't need the company's money. I'll pay it myself." His words were sonorous and forceful, but his heart was bleeding. How could he not know how much it would cost to invite the people of the Golden Rock Security Company? But in order to wash away his shame and make Tang Xiu pay the price, he had secretly decided to sell his expensive Porsche sports car. On a remote path, Tang Xiu coldly looked at Scarface Lee. With a flip of his wrist, he silently took out a Mitsubishi Army knife. This Mitsubishi Army knife was the one he took last time to deal with those thugs. "I'm very upset that you want to break my legs. If people don't offend me, I won't offend them. If people offend me, I'll pay them back double. So I've decided to break your limbs. However, I don't like trouble. If you tell me some news, I promise you won't have to spend the rest of your life in a wheelchair." Tang Xiu's words were neither fast nor slow, but it was like a thunderclap that exploded in Scarface Lee's heart. The rest of my life will be spent in a wheelchair? What was he most afraid of? Of course, he was most afraid of spending the rest of his life in a wheelchair. These years, he had done a lot of evil deeds and offended a lot of people. Before, people hated him, but they didn't dare to retaliate against him because of his excellent martial arts skills and a group of brothers under him. But if his limbs were broken, wouldn't there be countless people looking for him for revenge when the time came? When the tree falls, the monkeys scatter. When the wall falls, everyone pushes it. Scarface Lee was very clear that if that time came, he would probably not have the rest of his life. He steeled his heart, gritted his teeth and said, "Are you sure?" Tan Xiu lightly said, "I'm sure." Scarface Lee said with a deep voice, "Gu Yuetao." Sure enough, it's him. Tan Xiu secretly sighed inside. He had observed Gu Yuetao's facial features. After a simple exchange, he was clear about his character. He knew that this kid was a narrow-minded person who would seek revenge for the smallest grievance. However, he didn't offend him, and was just too lazy to pay attention to him. As a result, he bore a grudge against him. Cripple your own arm and get the hell out of here. Scarface Lee's heart turned cold. Looking at the Mitsubishi Army knife in Tan Xiu's hand, he silently took out a dagger from his waist and stabbed his left arm without hesitation. Puff! The dagger was pulled out and blood spurted out. At this moment, Long Jinglin's figure appeared at the entrance of the trail. When he saw the scene in the trail, his complexion greatly changed, and he dashed over with the speed of a 100-meter sprint. "Big Bro Tang, what happened?" "They're just some jumping clowns who received money from others to break my 2 legs, said Tang Xiu lightly. "But I dealt with them." Long Jinglin's eyes nearly popped out as he looked at the young bullies wailing in pain on the ground. He involuntarily exclaimed, "Big Bro Tang, these people are you the one who beat them down?" "Yes." Tan Xiu nodded. Long Jinglin raised his hand to touch his shiny bald head. With an incredulous expression, he exclaimed in admiration, "Amazing. You're really amazing. You're really worthy to be this Long Jinglin's big bro. You're simply too awesome. 13 of them. No, that's not right. There's also that bastard Scarface Lee. You single-handedly cleaned them up. I simply worship you to death. Get lost." Tan Xiu couldn't help but laugh as he cursed. Chapter 68. Long Jinglin grinned and turned to look at Scarface Lee. His complexion suddenly changed as he roared, "Scarface Lee, I think you're tired of living. You even dare to attack my boss. Kneel down and kowtow to my boss as an apology." After Long Jinglin's arrival, Scarface Lee's heart felt like it had fallen into an ice cave. Since Long Jinglin recognized him, he naturally recognized Long Jinglin as well. He also knew Long Jinglin's identity and power. With a sullen face, he cursed and cursed Gu Yuetao inwardly. But with a fawning expression on his face he said, "Young Master Long, I really didn't know that eldest Bro Tang is your boss. If I had known earlier, I wouldn't have dared to provoke Boss Tang even if I had 10 times the courage. It's all because of that bastard Gu Yuetao, he made us do it." Long Jinglin angrily said, "Gu Yuetao? This damned bastard was tired of living. Humph. I'll take care of him. But don't think you'll have it easy either. Kneel down and kowtow to my boss as an apology." "Forget it." Tan Xiu stopped Long Jinglin. He looked at Scarface Lee and indifferently said, "Take your men and scram. Remember, the wicked will be punished by the wicked. I, Tan Xiu, am not a good person, but since this is the first time you have offended me, I will not argue with you. If you dare to do anything improper in the future, be careful that I will destroy you all. Get lost." Scarface Lee endured the pain and nodded again and again. Yes, yes, yes. I will remember it. In the future, even if you give me 100 guts, I won't dare to offend you again." After a while, Tan Xiu watched as Scarface Lee and his group left in a sorry state. He glanced at Long Jinglin and asked while walking towards the commercial street, "You didn't come looking for me just to flatter me, did you?" Long Jinglin's thoughts were seen through, and a trace of embarrassment appeared on his face. Indeed, he had come looking for Xiao Chun to hug his thigh. After all, he had learned from his brother, Long Jingyu, about Tang Xiu's amazing and graceful bearing. He also learned from his father that when Tang Xiu treated Chen Jizhong, his violent beating methods were absolutely eye-catching and handsome to the extreme. Who was Chen Jizhong? That was the big boss of the Endless Virtue Pharmaceutical, a billionaire with a net worth of billions. What was the result? That towering figure that he had to look up to had actually knelt down and begged Tan Xiu to accept him as a disciple. Long Zhenglin felt that Tan Xiu's peerless charm had already reached a heaven-defying level. Big bro Tang, can't I just admire your grace? Long Zhenglin said with a thick face and a dry smile. Tan Xiu snappily scolded him with a smile. Get lost. Do you have nothing better to do? I have to go to the medicinal herbs market later, so I don't have time to deal with you. Just do what you need to do. Go to the medicinal herb market. Big bro Tang, why are you going to the medicinal herbs market? Do you want to buy Chinese medicinal herbs? If there's a need, you can just tell Chen Jizhong. He can't wait to hug your thigh and worship you as his master. Tan Xiu's expression turned gloomy as he solemnly said, try not to trouble others if you can solve it yourself. The most difficult thing to repay in this world is a debt of gratitude. Understand? Long Zhenglin's breathing stagnated. Then he nodded and said, you're right. A debt of gratitude is indeed the most difficult to repay for a person who values friendship and righteousness and keeps his word. Big bro Tang, I'll drive you there. You have a car? A trace of surprise was revealed on Tan Xiu's face. But after thinking about it, he felt relieved. With Long Zhenglin's identity and background, how could he not have a car? Perhaps it was a luxury car. Of course I have one. Mine is a luxury sports car. Do you know how many beauties cry and shout to hitch a ride with me? This young master doesn't even spare a glance at them, said Long Zhenglin proudly. Sure enough, these second-generation nouveau riches are all the same. They simply don't understand the meaning of hoeing the fields at noon and sweat dripping on the ground. They live a life of luxury, squandering money like it was dirt. Their luxurious sports cars could be worth half a bowl of hot rice, for many people, with just a step on the accelerator. Tan Xiu followed Long Zhenglin to a Lamborghini sports car. After observing it for a few moments, he secretly shook his head. With Long Zhenglin's big stature, wouldn't he feel aggrieved driving this kind of sports car? As the saying goes, you get what you pay for. A good car was indeed a good car. After sitting inside, Tan Xiu could feel the comfortable feeling. After observing the interior, he said, reincarnation is really a technical job, especially for someone like you who has good skills. At least, compared to ordinary people, you have to struggle for at least a few decades. No, it should be a lifetime. This car of yours should be worth a few million, right? Many people can't even earn a few million in their lifetime. Long Zhenglin let out an embarrassed smile and said, Big bro Tang, I didn't expect that apart from your skill in poison and martial arts, you also have a strong sense of humor. The longer I know you, the more I feel that you have great foresight. You're the peak of Mount Tai that I look up to. Bootlicker, Tan Xiu cursed with a smile. At the Dragon Bay Resort, inside a classical-styled villa, Long Hanwen was holding a stack of documents and calmly reading them. On the tea table in front of him, smoke was curling up from the teacup, accompanied by a faint fragrance of tea. Brother Chen, take a look at the investigation results. Long Hanwen's expression was a bit solemn. His eyes moved away from the last line of the document and handed it to Chen Jizhong, who was sitting at the side. Chen Jizhong silently took it. After reading it, his complexion turned exceptionally solemn. This document was the result of their investigation on Tan Xiu, especially the police investigation. A few days ago, the case of Xingqing City No. 1 High School was indeed committed by Tan Xiu to kill the A-level wanted criminal who took the hostage. Moreover, that A-level wanted criminal and the 5 A-level wanted criminals who were killed in the abandoned auto repair shop on Deep Red Cloud Street in peaceful Serene District are the same felons who trafficked in human organs. Since the police have investigated Tan Xiu, and Tan Xiu's whereabouts have been strange these days, I'm afraid he's the one who killed those 5 wanted criminals. Chen Jizhong said with a complex expression. Long Hanwen nodded in agreement. That should be the case. Originally, I thought that Tan Xiu was just a good young man. But now it seems that he's definitely not as simple as he appears on the surface. Those 5A-level wanted criminals. Each of them was a ruthless character whose hands were stained with blood, yet all of them were killed by him, including the one he killed at the school. The number of people who died in his hands is no less than 6. With a serious expression, Chen Zhizhong said, "Extraordinary people do extraordinary things. People who practice martial arts have a narrow sense of justice. The police can't do anything to those organ trafficking felons, but Tan Xiu's actions are also not wrong. This master, I firmly believe him." Long Hanwen was confused. "Are you sure that Tan Xiu's strength is stronger than yours?" Chen Zhizhong said with a resolute and decisive tone. "He's absolutely stronger than me. Isn't there a living example right now? If it were me, it would be absolutely impossible for me to save Yuan Jingshuan's ex-wife unscathed, and still be able to kill so many wanted criminals in one piece." Long Hanwen said, "Now that you said it, I remember that Tan Xiu unexpectedly saved Yuan Jingshuan's ex-wife. It seems that Yuan Zhengxian owes him a big favor. TSK. Who would have thought that a little high school student could unexpectedly make 2 famous figures in the business world owe him a favor? I can't even imagine how terrifying his achievements will be when he's older." A trace of a smile was revealed on Chen Zhizhong's face. As the saying goes, when encountering a storm, a dragon will emerge. How could the master Chen Zhizhong recognize be mediocre? Long Hanwen laughed and said, "That's right. However, our friendship with Yuan Zhengxian is only SOSO, and our business cooperation is almost zero. Now that we have a relationship with Tan Xiu, we need to get closer to him." Chen Zhizhong couldn't help laughing. "Old fox. Ha ha ha." While the two of them were laughing, Long Hanwen received a text message. After reading it, he looked at Chen Zhizhong with a strange expression and said, "Little Lin sent me a message saying that Tan Xiu is going to Star City's medicinal herbs market." Chen Zhizhong suddenly got up and said without hesitation, "I'll go too." Long Hanwen quickly pulled him and said, "If you go there directly, Tan Xiu will definitely know that Little Lin secretly told us. I think that even if we go there, we must pretend that it's a chance encounter. Didn't you just recover from your injury? I think it's good to buy medicinal herbs as an excuse." "That's right." Chen Zhizhong patted his forehead as he grinned. Star City Jingdi Villa Complex. On the high-end European sofa, Yuan Chuling was dumbfounded as he looked at his mother, Zhao Jing, who was nestled in the arms of his father, Yuan Zhengxian. There was a deep confusion in his eyes. He clearly remembered that his father and mother had divorced and lived in different places. But now, after a long while, Yuan Zhengxian pacified Zhao Jing and said, "I'll make a phone call and ask about the situation at the auto repair shop on Deep Red Cloud Road in peaceful Serene District. I hope your savior is safe and sound." Zhao Jing had long lost the appearance of a strong woman, as she obediently nodded. Yuan Chuling looked at his father, who grabbed the phone and walked to the side. With doubts in his heart, he came to his mother's side and sat down. He then asked in a low voice, "Mom, you and Dad are?" Zhao Jing glanced at her husband's back and whispered, "Little Ling, don't blame us for not telling you. In fact, your father and I divorced is fake. We have our own difficulties. Wait for a few years. After you graduate from college, you'll be able to survive in society with your own ability. We'll tell you the truth then. But for now, don't ask. Just study well." Yuan Chuling was stunned. Even in his dreams, he had never thought that his mother would give him such an answer. The divorce was fake. Then, did he misunderstand his parents? Suddenly, Yuan Chuling felt that he was too insensible. Thinking about how he had abandoned himself to despair, a strong sense of remorse arose in his heart. If it weren't for his eldest brother, Tan Xiu, he was afraid that he would still not make progress and abandon himself to despair. A few minutes later, Yuan Zhengxian hung up the phone as he returned to Zhao Jing and Yuan Chuling with a strange expression. After hesitating for a moment, he looked at his wife and asked, "Honey, you said on the phone that your savior is a young man, right? Do you know his name?" Chapter 69. Zhao Jing shook her head and said, "The situation was critical at that time. so I didn't have the time to ask. Besides, the other party didn't seem to want to tell me about his situation. Honey, did something happen to my benefactor? Yuan Zhengxian said. Your benefactor is fine. But those kidnappers, they. Hearing that her benefactor was fine, Zhao Jing's tense heart immediately calmed down and curiously asked, what happened to those kidnappers? I remember that in order to save me, my benefactor killed one of the kidnappers who tried to humiliate me. Honey, what happened to my benefactor? We can't just stand idly by if the police want to pursue responsibility. Yuan Zhengxian forced a smile and said, how could the police pursue the benefactor's responsibility? They're still having a headache about who killed those kidnappers. All 5 kidnappers were killed, and the young man who saved you has disappeared without a trace. Honey, since you don't know his name, you should know what he looks like, right? He looks like... Zhao Jing described the face that she had deeply remembered. Yuan Chuling quietly listened to his mother's description. The more he heard, the weirder his expression became. When his mother's last sentence was spoken, he couldn't help but exclaim, it's eldest brother. The one who saved my mother is my eldest brother, Tan Xiao. Yuan Zhengxian frowned and reprimanded, little Ling, don't talk nonsense. Yuan Chuling said with all seriousness, Dad, I'm not talking nonsense. If my mother's description of her benefactor is correct, then this person is really my eldest brother, Tan Xiao. That's right. My classmate was kidnapped by the kidnapper's accomplice at school. It was eldest brother who killed the criminal and saved my classmate. Yuan Zhengxian learned from the police what happened in Xingqing No. 1 high school a few days ago, but he never thought that his son would be able to determine the identity of his benefactor. Moreover, the other party was his son's classmate. Little Ling, whether it's your classmate or not, your mother knows best. If you have time, invite your classmate to our house as a guest. When the time comes, your mother will know. Yuan Zhengxian said while thinking. All right. Yuan Chuling nodded heavily. Star City's medicinal herbs market was huge and had countless types of medicinal herbs. Every day, medicinal herbs were transported from all over the country. They were either sold locally or transported to other cities. Su Shangwen's life had been terrible recently, especially after the incident at his 40th birthday party, which caused many of his friends to reject him. Every time he thought of that incident, every time he thought of Tan Xiao's face, he would gnash his teeth in hatred. However, yesterday, he had finally negotiated a deal and was just waiting to officially sign the contract. Therefore, he brought his wife to the medicinal herb market to buy some ginseng, cordyceps, and other medicinal herbs. When he returned home, he would make a pot of duck soup to reward himself. Hubby, this medicinal herb market is a mess. Why did we come here to buy those medicinal herbs? Just leave it to your subordinates to handle these matters. Zhang Meiyun's face was filled with disgust as she looked at the noisy scene in the medicinal herb market. She covered her mouth and nose with her unstained fingers. After looking around, Su Shangwen shook his head and said, I don't feel at ease leaving the matter of buying medicinal herbs to the subordinates. You're just a woman, so you don't know the ways of the medicinal herb industry. Medicinal herbs are also divided into artificially planted and wild ones. Artificially planted medicinal herbs don't have much effect. Only buying wild medicinal herbs is a great tonic. There are a lot of ways to do it, Zhang Meiyun snappily said. Suddenly, Zhang Meiyun's eyes narrowed. She immediately raised her arm and said, Hubby, look at that man. Doesn't he look like that little bastard Tan Xiao? Su Shangwen looked at the direction of his wife's finger. An angry expression suddenly appeared on his face as he strode forward and said, What do you mean? He's that little bastard. If it weren't for him, would our company's business be so miserable recently? Would my old friends avoid me like a plague? Let's go and see how I'll clean him up. Some time ago, Su Shangwen had sent his company's men to bribe a group of hooligans to teach Tan Xiao a lesson. But the result? He didn't know what happened to those damn hooligans. Not only did they not clean up Tan Xiao, but they even helped his younger sister, Su Lingyun, who he had always looked down on, to take care of the restaurant business. As a result, the business of the originally mediocre small restaurant turned out to be booming recently. Tan Xiao, You're just a piece of mud that can't even hold up a wall. What are you doing in the medicine market, instead of going to class in broad daylight? Your mom is working so hard to earn money to support your education, yet you're skipping class like this? Do you have any sense of humanity? Don't be so shameless. Su Shangwen's mouth was very vicious as he cursed at him. Tan Xiao frowned with a disgusted look in his eyes. He didn't look at the almanac when he went out today. He didn't expect that he would bump into Su Shangwen and his wife. He was perfectly aware of Su Shangwen's weight. If it wasn't because he was afraid that his mother would be sad, he would have already cleaned up Su Shangwen and his wife. Who do you think you are? Do I need you to meddle in my affairs? Tan Xiao indifferently glanced at Su Shangwen and coldly snorted. Su Shangwen was furious. He couldn't wait to slap this cheap nephew of his to death. Rolling up his sleeves, Su Shangwen angrily shouted, Tan Xiao, you ask me who I am? I'm your uncle. As your elder, do you think I can't control you? Apologize to me and then go back to school. Otherwise, I'll report this to your principal and have you directly expelled and disqualified from the college entrance test. Tan Xiao sneered and said, Uncle? My uncle is a bastard. Do you want to be that bastard? Also, haven't you already bribed the school's leaders and tried every means possible to make them expel me? I'll wait here. Do you have the ability to do it? Let's see if the school will expel me, or you will make a fool of yourself. At the side, Long Zhenglin deeply frowned. His ability to observe people's words and body language was very powerful. Through the conversation between Su Shangwen and Tan Xiao, he was sure that the man in front of him was Tan Xiao's uncle. But as an uncle, he unexpectedly treated his nephew like this. He was truly worse than a beast. After a moment of hesitation, he took a few steps forward and stood side by side with Tan Xiao. He indifferently looked at Su Shangwen and said, No matter who you are, humiliating Tan Xiao is the same as humiliating me, Long Zhenglin. Either get the hell out of here, or I'll clean you up now. Su Shangwen stared blankly for a moment. Only then did he realize that there was a young man next to Tan Xiao. However, he had always been aloof in his company, and he was also arrogant even among his relatives. But now he was actually being shouted at by a young man. He immediately became angry and said, Where the hell did you come from? What does it have to do with you? This father teaching my nephew a lesson. Get the hell out of here, else I'll make you look good. Long Zhenglin was so angry that he laughed and said with a stern voice, Do you have the ability to make me look good? This young master is afraid of my old man. There is no one else that Long Zhenglin is afraid of. Tan Xiao coldly looked at Su Shangwen's ashen face and fiery eyes. He then turned his head and said, Long Zhenglin, I think it's a waste of time talking to this kind of person. Let's go. Long Zhenglin glared at Su Shangwen provocatively as he raised his leg to follow Tan Xiao to leave. Stop. Su Shangwen's anger soared to the sky as he blocked the two men and shouted, You've really overturned the sky. You two little bastards. If I, Su Shangwen, don't tidy you up today, I'll write my surname upside down. What a big tone. A sneer rang out from the crowd that had gathered around. Gong Dalong pulled his suitcase and walked to the front of Su Shangwen. He had already recognized Tan Xiao because he had seen Tan Xiao's photo before he came to Star City. However, he didn't expect that someone would dare to provoke their master's savior. Su Shangwen's complexion slightly changed. He didn't expect that someone would unexpectedly come out halfway. He looked at Gong Dalong a few times and found that Gong Dalong was wearing famous brands from head to toe, as well as a faint imposing manner. His imposing manner immediately weakened a bit, but he still spoke in a bad mood. Who are you, mister? Is it your turn to poke your nose into other people's business? Gong Dalong no longer paid attention to Su Shangwen. After putting down his suitcase, he stood in front of Tan Xiao and respectfully said, Grandmaster Tang, I'm Gong Dalong. Master asked me to greet you when I see you. Tan Xiao faintly nodded as he sized up Gong Dalong. He had a square face, thick eyebrows, big eyes and deep eyes. Yet there was no trace of craftiness in them. Let's talk about our matter later. Gong Dalong deeply bowed to Tan Xiao before he turned to look at Su Shangwen and said, Many people in Star City know who I am. If you have some power, send someone to inquire about it. Besides, Grandmaster Tang will be my honored guest. So it's not your turn to humiliate him. Else, you'll have to bear the consequences. Su Shangwen looked at Gong Dalong with an incredulous expression. He was silent for a while before he pointed at Tan Xiao and said, "You mean, he's your honored guest? What kind of joke is this? No one knows his background better than I do. You couldn't have mistaken him for someone else, right?" "I'm not blind," Gong Dalong said with a sinking tone. Seeing that Gong Dalong insisted on sticking up for him, a bit of resentment suddenly sprouted in Su Shangwen's heart. He directly grabbed his mobile and took a few photos of Gong Dalong. After that, he wrote a few words and sent them out as fast as he could. Soon his mobile rang. Su Shangwen picked up the phone and heard the conversation. He finally replied with "I know," and then hung up the phone. "I was wondering who it was. It turns out to be the eldest apprentice of Jiarui Dao, the one who made his fortune by gambling." "Humph. Gong Dalong, I just heard that your master can't even protect himself now, yet you're here to stick up for Tan Xiao? What are you pretending for?" Gong Dalong's face was filled with anger. Just as he was about to speak, a voice was faster than him. "I heard a dog barking from far away. No wonder there are so many people here." Chen Jizhong and Long Hanwen walked together, and the one who spoke was Chen Jizhong. Su Shangwen was dumbfounded. He was a person in the business circle, so how could he not know Chen Jizhong and Long Hanwen? In his eyes, these two people were simply like towering mountains that he had to look up to. However, he could hear a bit of hidden meaning. It was as if Chen Jizhong's insult was directed at him. Chapter 70. Su Shangwen desperately gulped down his saliva. He turned his head and fiercely glared at Tan Xiao. Only then did he change his appearance and said with an obsequious smile, "Boss Chen, I didn't expect to meet you here. Is this Boss Long? I'm Su Shangwen, the boss of Shangwen Real Estate." "Boss Long, our Shangwen Real Estate has just reached an agreement with a subsidiary of your Long Group. I believe we can sign the contract in a few days." Long Hanwen sneered. "Shangwen Real Estate Su Shangwen? Never heard of him." After saying that, under the watchful eyes of everyone present, he took out his mobile and dialed a cell number. Then he said with a sinking tone, "I want to know who has reached an agreement with Shangwen Real Estate. Fire him. Also, cancel the cooperation with Shangwen Real Estate. Remember, spread the news that whoever dares to cooperate with Shangwen Real Estate in the future will be going against our Long Group." What? Su Shangwen suspected that there was something wrong with his ears. He looked at Long Hanwen with disbelief and involuntarily exclaimed, "Boss Long, you are." Long Hanwen pointed to Long Zhenglin at Tan Xiao's side and said without being salty nor light, "He's my son. Someone just clamored to make him look good. Do you think that your son is being humiliated by others as a father? You can just watch indifferently?" After saying that, he then pointed to Tan Xiao and said again, "Tan Xiao is my Long family's benefactor. Whoever dares to go against him will be going against my Long family. If he wants, as long as he says it, my Long family will do whatever it takes to erase your Shangwen Real Estate from this world forever." "What did you say?" Su Shangwen's complexion instantly turned deathly pale. His eyes kept wandering back and forth between Tan Xiao, Long Zhenglin and Long Hanwen. He could accept the fact that Long Zhenglin was Long Hanwen's son. But when did this little bastard Tan Xiao do the Long family owe him a favor? In a flash, Su Shangwen seemed to have aged more than 10 years. That wave of fear was pounding against his shattered heart again and again. It's over. He knew that he was finished. With Tan Xiao's hatred for him, it was likely that his Shangwen Real Estate would not be able to escape this time. However, what happened next made him open his mouth wide, and the fear in his eyes increased exponentially. After Long Hanwen finished speaking, Chen Jizhong walked a few steps to the front of Tan Xiao. He respectfully bowed and said, "Master, it's all my fault for coming late and making you suffer humiliation. Don't worry, even if Brother Long doesn't make a move, I won't let Shangwen Real Estate continue to exist. Please don't refuse. This is just a small token of my appreciation." Tan Xiao looked at Chen Jizhong indifferently and said, "I haven't agreed to accept you as my disciple. Still, Chen Jizhong keenly captured the implied meaning in Tan Xiu's words. He was overjoyed. Regardless of the large number of people gathered around, he knelt straight in front of Tan Xiu and begged, "Master, please accept me. I'll definitely follow the ancient tradition and be filial to you in the future. I'll listen to your words." Tan Xiu frowned. He waved his hand and said, "Get up first. We'll talk about this later." Yes. Seeing that Tan Xiu didn't directly refuse this time, Chen Jizhong was extremely happy inside. Just like a junior obeying his elder, he bowed his head and obediently stood to the side. Plop! Su Shangwen knelt in front of Tan Xiu and begged with a face full of regret. "Tan Xiu, my dear nephew, Uncle was in the wrong before. It's all Uncle's fault. You're a great man and don't stoop to my level. Please beg Boss Long and Boss Chen to let me off, okay? I promise that I'll serve you like a grandson in the future. I beg you." Zhang Meiyun's complexion was also as pale as paper at this moment. She was used to living a life of luxury. If Shangwen real estate. Wow! The surrounding onlookers suddenly burst into an uproar. They originally came here to watch the fun, and also figured out the relationship between Tan Xiu and Su Shangwen. They didn't expect that as an uncle, he would treat his nephew like that. What was even more unexpected was that after seeing a big shot standing up for Tan Xiu, this uncle didn't even care about his face, and shamelessly knelt in front of his nephew. For a moment, the sound of discussion rang out. "I've seen shameless people, but I've never seen such a shameless person. It's true that there are all kinds of birds in a big forest. This is too shameless, isn't it? How can a person be so shameless to this extent?" An uncle kneeling in front of his nephew. Today is really an eye-opener. Is he still a man? He's so cheap just for some money. A man's knees have gold. He kneels to heaven, earth and his parents. But he actually kneels in front of his nephew. He's really the best of the best. If I had such a son, I'd definitely strangle him to death. This kind of face is really disgusting. Looking at his behavior today, he must have done a lot of evil in the past. He should be properly punished. Don't forgive him. This kind of person should be ruined and lose everything. Shameless. Listening to the curses coming from the surrounding crowd, Su Shangwen's heart felt as if it was being cut by a knife. If there was a crack on the ground at this moment, he really wanted to drill into it. However, the premise was that Tan Xiu forgave him, and Long Hanwen and Chen Jizhong wouldn't deal with him. Tan Xiu had experienced thousands of years. Except for his mother, his heart had long been tempered to be as hard as a stone. Facing Su Shangwen's bitter pleading, he didn't speak. He was very clear about the truth. For people like Su Shangwen, even if he didn't clean him up, he wouldn't have a good end in the future. Similarly, he was also clear about one thing. If he didn't know Long Hanwen, if he didn't know Chen Jizhong, if he didn't have thousands of years of experience, perhaps he would have already been cleaned up by Su Shangwen. But now, even if he didn't serve his sentence in prison, he would have been seriously injured by those hooligans, and would be lying in the hospital. A good horse would be ridden, and a good man would be bullied. He didn't want to be a good man, even if he never took the initiative to bully good people. Tan Xiu looked at Long Hanwen and calmly asked, "Uncle Long, why did you come to the medicinal herbs market?" Long Hanwen said with a smile, "Brother Chen's injury has just been cured by you. So he dragged me to the medicinal herbs market, hoping to buy some medicinal herbs that can nourish the body." Tan Xiu nodded and said, "If that's the case, then go and see the medicinal herbs. I still have other things to do, so I can't compensate you." Long Hanwen didn't speak, but turned to look at Chen Jizhong. Chen Jizhong quickly said, "Master, are you going to buy medicinal herbs? If you need medicinal herbs, you can tell me. I'll buy them and send them to you." Tan Xiu waved and said, "No need. Come to Southgate Town tomorrow night." Good. Chen Jizhong was overjoyed and excitedly agreed. Tan Xiu made a gesture to Gong Dalong. He didn't even look at Su Shangwen and his wife, who were kneeling on the ground, as he walked toward the depths of the medicinal herbs market. As for Long Zhenglin, he grinned and followed him. The Star City Medicinal Herbs Market was divided into two major areas, the stall area and the shop area. Most of the precious medicinal herbs in the entire market were in the shop area. Of course, the price of each precious medicinal herb was also very expensive. Tan Xiu didn't directly go to the shop area, but walked in front of the stalls, looking at the variety of medicinal herbs on display. At present, his heavenly art of quintessential space genesis had been cultivated to the first stage, the peak of Qi cultivating stage, and his body had cultivated to the 9th star sphere. Next was the second stage of the first stage, skin strengthening. By polishing the skin and flesh, the skin fibers would be strengthened and tough, reaching the point of invulnerability. If he had reached the skin strengthening stage before he met those murderers who sold human organs, he wouldn't have been afraid of the pistols in their hands, and could have directly crushed them. A few minutes later, Tan Xiu stopped in front of a stall, as his eyes fell on a delicate and beautiful blood-like flower. He knew this flower. Once in the immortal world, it also had a famous name, blood spiral shell. This blood spiral shell had a huge effect in refining the consciousness condensing pill. Consciousness condensing pill. The best pill to condense one's spiritual sense and enhance one's mental power. Moreover, it had a strong healing effect on damaged spiritual sense. Even in the immortal world, the immortals generally had a great demand for consciousness condensing pills. Boss, how much is this blood spiral shell? Tan Xiu looked at the middle-aged stall owner and asked. The middle-aged stall owner looked at the blood spiral shell with a surprised expression, and said with a confused expression, "Little brother, this isn't a blood spiral shell. It's called chestnut flower, and it has a very good effect in nourishing one's blood and qi. The price, relatively speaking, it's a bit more expensive." "How much is it?" asked Tan Xiu. The middle-aged stall owner hesitated for a moment before saying, 500 yuan. "If you want it, I'll sell it to you." 500 yuan? Tan Xiu secretly rolled his eyes. If this blood spiral shell was placed in the immortal world, it would be a precious medicinal herb that countless people would break their heads to get. But now in this world, it was unexpectedly sold for only 500 yuan like a cabbage. At his side, Long Zhenglin angrily interrupted and said, "Boss, are you trying to rip off a sucker? 500 yuan for a flower? I have a lot of this kind of flower. Do you want to buy it?" The middle-aged stall owner was speechless. "Boss, we're doing business, paying attention to not cheating the old and young, and paying attention to harmony," said Long Zhenglin. "It's really not right for you to ask such a sky-high price. Just sell it to us for 200 yuan. If you agree, we'll pay immediately. But if you don't, we'll turn around and leave." The middle-aged stall owner looked at Long Zhenglin, and then looked at Tan Xiu. He then forced a smile and said, All right. I can tell that little brother has a discerning eye. Since you've said that, I'll sell it to you for 200 yuan. Long Zhenglin looked at Tan Xiu with a proud expression. Just as he was about to take out the money, Tan Xiu had already taken out the money and handed 2 100 yuan bills to the middle-aged stall owner. Then he took the blood spiral shell and turned around to leave. Tan Xiu didn't have much hope in this trip to the medicinal herbs market. He just wanted to try his luck, but he didn't expect that he would pick up a treasure. He knew about the price of medicinal herbs in this world, and the price of a slightly precious medicinal herb was outrageously high. Don't look at the hundreds of thousands of yuan in his bag. If he encountered a precious medicinal herb, perhaps he wouldn't even be able to buy one. Chapter 71. Sometimes luck couldn't be stopped. Tang Xiu wandered in the medicinal herbs market stall area for nearly an hour, and bought 2 precious medicinal herbs at a very low price. Although their preciousness couldn't be compared with the blood spiral shell, it was definitely a good thing for him now. "Eldest brother Tang, do you really have medical skills?" Long Zhenglin finally couldn't help but ask after holding back for a long time. "I know a bit," Tan Xiu said lightly. "You're worthy to be my eldest brother. You really have a lot of skills." Long Zhenglin praised. "Now I really wonder if there's anything you can't do. But why did you buy these medicinal herbs? Don't tell me you're not feeling well?" Tan Xiu glanced at him and said, "I'm going to face the college entrance test soon, and the pressure of studying is huge. So I'm going to buy some medicinal herbs to supplement my body. How about I give you a prescription? You can buy the medicinal herbs according to the prescription, and drink it when you go back. It'll cure your illness. My illness? Long Zhenglin rolled his eyes and snappily said, Eldest brother Tang, my body is great. What's wrong with me? Tan Xiu said lightly, if a man's skill in bed is not good, then he's sick. Especially those who can't hold on for more than 3 minutes, they're seriously sick. Forget it. If you don't admit it, then I don't need to trouble myself. Long Zhenglin was stunned. Never in his wildest dreams did he expect that Tang Xiu would be able to see through his most private affairs. He indeed had this kind of problem. It was fine before. At least he could hold on for 7 or 8 minutes, because of his vigorous blood and vigor. But recently, it was hard for him to hold on for more than 3 minutes, due to having too much sexual intercourse. Eldest brother, no big brother. You're my blood brother. Hurry up and give me this prescription. I'll exchange anything for it. A charming smile was outlined on the corner of Tan Xiu's mouth. The reason why he gave Long Zhenglin the prescription, and asked him to buy the medicinal herbs, was to send him away from his side. Otherwise, this guy would be like Tang Sung, a long-winded chatterbox that made him depressed. Kidney deficiency. Long Zhenglin had this problem, and it was a serious kidney deficiency. People with severe kidney deficiency would definitely not be able to have sexual intercourse. It was a simple matter for him to treat this kind of illness. Go find a pen and paper. Long Zhenglin, without demur, immediately ran to the stall on the side. A moment later, he came in front of Tan Xiu with a pen and paper. His eager look made Tan Xiu feel that it was funny. After writing a prescription, Tan Xiu sent Long Zhenglin away, and continued to stroll around the stalls. As for Gong Dalong, who had been silently following behind him, Tan Xiu was not in the mood to pay attention to him for now. He needed medicinal herbs now, and he needed to buy a large number of precious medicinal herbs at a low price. What a pity! His good luck seemed to have run out all of a sudden. After a while, he did not find any other precious medicinal herbs. With a disappointed look, he changed his route and walked toward the shop area. Every shop, every display case. Tan Xiu observed very carefully, not letting go of any kind of medicinal herbs. However, the prices that could enter his eyes were outrageously high, and he could not afford them now. The price was slightly lower, and he could still afford them, but they could not enter his eyes. Night fell. The street lights of the medicinal herbs market had been lit up, and many medicinal herb shops had begun to take samples. Tan Xiu strolled around. Because Long Zhenglin was not noisy at the side, his mood was calm. Tang Xiu looked up and saw that the lights were still on, but the medicinal herbs store didn't seem to have any intention of closing up. He then walked inside. Welcome. What can I do for the two gentlemen? A young shop assistant wearing a cheongsam greeted him, with a professional smile on his face. Tan Xiu said, I'm just looking around. You don't need to greet me. If I see a medicinal herb that I fancy, I'll call you first. All right, please take your time, sir. Tan Xiu did not directly look at the medicinal herbs on the display case, but first looked at the antique decoration of the medicinal herbs shop. He found that the layout of this shop was very interesting. It seemed that someone deliberately arranged it to form a good feng shui layout. He was very familiar with arrays, especially this simplest feng shui layout. He could see through the whole layout at a glance. When his eyes fell on the manekiniko on the counter, a smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. This shop is interesting. Smooth sailing brings wealth and treasures. As the saying goes, there is a master in every profession. In today's world, there was feng shui. Although most of them pretended to be feng shui masters to swindle people, there were still some who had real skills. After all, feng shui was a treasure handed down by the ancestors. After thousands of years of inheritance, it was understandable for powerful people to arrange this kind of feng shui layout. Subsequently, Tan Xiu cast his eyes on the various medicinal herbs in the display case. To his surprise, he found a hundreds of years old wild ginseng. But seeing the price next to the wild ginseng, his mouth could not help but twitch a few times. 7 digits. A hundreds of years old wild ginseng was actually sold for 7 digits. Tan Xiu could not help but think that if he sold all the spiritual herbs in his herb garden in the immortal world on Earth, he would probably be able to buy the entire Earth. Right? As he slowly observed, the disappointment on Tan Xiu's face became more and more intense. It was the same situation he encountered in other medicinal herb shops. The slightly better prices were ridiculously expensive, and the cheaper ones were not worth his attention. Could it be? Was he going to return home like this? He was a little unwilling. After looking through all the medicinal herbs in the display case, his footsteps stopped in front of a display case. He looked at a spiritual fruit inside with a strange expression. Holy dragon fruit? There was actually a holy dragon fruit in this world? Tan Xiu secretly suppressed the shock in his heart. His eyes swept over the price, and he almost cursed out loud. The price of this holy dragon fruit was only $8,888. What a waste of natural resources. What a waste of natural resources. This holy dragon fruit was a holy fruit that countless powerhouses in the immortal world wanted to obtain. If it was used to refine medicinal pills, it could absolutely be used to refine the best primordial chaos pill in the immortal world. One must know that a primordial chaos pill could make an ordinary person ascend to the immortal world. If it was given to the lowest level immortal, he would probably be able to reach the golden immortal stage in a short time, becoming an existence that countless immortals would admire. Tan Xiu estimated that all the precious medicinal herbs in the entire medicinal herb shop were multiplied by 10,000. But it was still not comparable to the value of this holy dragon fruit. Miss, Tan Xiu waved to the salesgirl who greeted him before. The salesgirl leisurely came with a smile and warmly said, "What can I do for you, sir?" Tan Xiu pointed to the holy dragon fruit and said, "I'll take it." The salesgirl said with a smile, "You really have a good eye, sir. This fruit is called the snake dragon fruit. If you use it to decoct medicine, it will have a great effect on the human body. Unfortunately, this spiritual fruit is very difficult to obtain. My boss had to go through a lot of connections to bring one back from Qinghai. That's right. It also has a miraculous feature. That is, it won't rot for a short time if it's placed in a jade box." Tan Xiu said, "Give it to me. I'll pay for it now." "All right, sir, please come with me." After a simple transaction, the holy dragon fruit completely belonged to Tan Xiu. After obtaining such a precious holy fruit, Tan Xiu also lost the mood to continue strolling. After leaving the medicinal herb market, Tan Xiu looked at Gong Dalong, who was following behind him, and lightly asked, "Do you have a place to stay?" Gong Dalong said, "Yes, but I don't have much time, so I'm afraid I have to hurry back." Tan Xiu nodded. He casually stopped a taxi on the street and took Gong Dalong back to Southgate Town. He didn't want to care about Jia Ruidao's matter. He only wanted to see Gong Dalong, and it was Gong Dalong's attitude. Inside the villa, Tan Xiu saw that the house had been cleaned, and he was quite satisfied with the cleaning staff's work. He signaled Gong Dalong to sit on the sofa, and then directly sat on the opposite sofa. Tell me the cause and effect." Gong Dalong forced a smile and said, "Actually, the one who stirred up the trouble first was my junior brother, Jia Yele. He's also my master's son. My master has 3 disciples. I'm his eldest disciple. The second is Zhang Taichun, and the third is Jia Yele. Some time ago, my junior brother gambled with others on the gambling table. But the result was that he was schemed against by others. Not only did he lose all his money, but he also lost several properties under his name. In order to win, he looked for his second junior brother Zhang Taichun. On gambling skills, second junior brother's level is much better than his junior brother's. As a result, second junior brother was also schemed against. Not only did he lose all his property, but he also borrowed tens of millions from the other party. Similarly, he also lost tens of millions of yuan. Because they had no money to repay the debt, second junior brother and junior brother braced themselves and told this matter to master. Originally, my master intended to take out tens of millions of yuan to pay off their gambling debts, and then drop the matter. However, my junior brother didn't want to and pestered master for several days, asking master to help him get back his face. Unable to bear his pleading, master went to gamble with the other party, and the result was... Tan Xiu interrupted Gong Dalong's words and said, "The other party was very powerful. and your master was far from being his opponent. And then he lost miserably? Yes, Gong Dalong said bitterly. My master lost miserably. Tan Xiao said. Since his skill was not as good as the other party, then give up. Why did he ask me for help? Gong Dalong said. On the gambling table, even a gambling expert will lose his mind once his eyes turn red from losing. My master was incited by the other party, and was swayed by his emotions. He then bet my master's wife's relic, the only jade pendant left for master. He lost again. He lost. Gong Dalong clenched his fists and bowed his head. Tan Xiao shook his head and said, So, even if your master regretted it, he had no choice but to continue gambling with the other party. He didn't want to win back the money he lost, but only wanted to win back the only relic left by your master's wife? Yeah, Gong Dalong nodded. As a result, my master borrowed a lot of money and gambled with the other party a few times every day, but he lost miserably every time. Master had no choice but to ask you for help. Chapter 72. Gamblers would lose their money like a bottomless pit. Even if they were used to being filthy rich, they still couldn't afford to bet on the gambling table. Tang Xiao had personally witnessed gamblers losing their entire family's fortune. He had also witnessed gamblers selling their children, wives, and elders. Jia Ruidao didn't lose his life in gambling, which is already a blessing in misfortune. I already know about the matter between you and master. If there's nothing else, you can leave now. Gong Dalong was stunned. He didn't expect that after listening to the whole story, Tan Xiao would unexpectedly ask him to leave. What did he mean by this? Did he refuse to help? Grandmaster Tang Yu. Tan Xiao interrupted him and said, Didn't I express it clearly enough? I really can't help you in this matter. Gong Dalong asked with difficulty. Why? My master said that your gambling skills are better than his. If you are given a little guidance and training, your gambling skills will be much better than my master. Let me correct you a few points. Tan Xiao said with a smile. First, I'm not interested in gambling, and I have no interest in the training you said. Second, if you want to be a professional gambler, you must be mentally prepared to lose all your fortune. Third, there's only 1 month left before I take the college entrance test. Not to mention that it's impossible for the school to give me a vacation. I won't be able to explain it to my mother. Gong Dalong looked anxious as he knelt in front of Tan Xiao and begged. Grandmaster Tang, I beg you. Please help my master. As long as you're willing to help me, not only will I offer all my fortune to you, but I'll also be willing to serve you after I take care of my master. Looking at Gong Dalong, Tan Xiao suddenly remembered his old slave in the immortal world. That loyal and devoted old slave followed him in order to repay his kindness. He didn't know what happened to him after he was plotted against. Gong Dalong spoke again. Grandmaster Tang, I'll be responsible for solving the school's matter and your mother's problem. I won't make things difficult for you. Tan Xiao stared blankly and asked with a confused expression. Can you solve it? Gong Dalong confidently said. I can. If I can't solve it, I won't bother you anymore. Tan Xiao stood up and said, If that's the case, I'll wait. Gong Dalong was overjoyed. He originally thought that it would take some effort to get Tan Xiao to agree. He didn't expect Tan Xiao to agree so easily. Instantly, he felt a deep sense of gratitude. However, seeing that Tan Xiao had the intention to send him off, he immediately said, Please wait for my news, Grandmaster Tang. It's getting late, so I won't bother you any longer. Take care. Tan Xiao nodded calmly. The imperial capital at night was unusually bustling. A white Porsche Cayenne shuttled through the traffic. In the driver's seat, Kang Xia was listening to the melodious light music while thinking about something in her mind. Ring, ring, ring. The ringtone of her cell phone interrupted her thoughts. As she put on her Bluetooth headset, she answered the call and said, This is Kang Xia. Tan Xiao's information has been sent to your email. However, the information you've provided is too little. I've screened it, and there are 2 people who meet your conditions. All right, Kang Xia took off the headset and turned the steering wheel. She turned right at the intersection ahead and stopped at the roadside after moving forward for 100 meters. Immediately after, She grabbed the laptop from the front seat and quickly opened the email, silently looking at it. Quickly, her expression turned a bit strange. One of them was a timber businessman named Tan Xiao, but she directly excluded him. But the second one turned out to be a high school student? A former genius turned into a waste after a car accident? Kang Xiao's black brows tightly wrinkled as a thoughtful expression flashed in her eyes. If not for this comment, she would have directly given up the idea in her heart. After a moment, she put the laptop back on the front seat and decided to go to Star City herself. She dialed the phone again and said, "Andy, help me book a flight ticket to Star City tomorrow morning." "No problem," the sensual voice sounded. However, she hesitated for a moment and curiously asked, "Boss, what are you going to do in Star City? Don't tell me you're going to see that Tan Xiao?" An arc curled on the corner of Kang Xiao's mouth. A smile rippled as she said, "Haven't you guys been quarreling about being bored recently? I really want to smell a trace of opportunity. If this trip to Star City is successful, then I really want to congratulate you. You're about to start working." "Hooray!" The sensual voice sounded pleasantly surprised. As the saying goes, the spring is the best time to plan for a year, and the morning is the best time to plan for a day. Early in the morning, the bright and beautiful sun shone on the earth, bringing warmth to the world. Tan Xiao, who had been absent from school for many days, finally rushed to school. As he entered class 10, he saw a messy classroom with many students gathered together and chatting. Yuan Chuling, on the other hand, was silently sitting in the classroom, looking at the textbook in his hand. "Has this kid changed his nature?" Tan Xiao muttered inwardly as he strode toward his seat. The moment Tan Xiao entered the classroom, the originally messy scene turned quiet. Almost all the students were aware of Tan Xiao's arrival, and their eyes were fixedly staring at Tan Xiao. "This extremely daring guy actually came to class today. Isn't he afraid of being taught a lesson by Miss Han?" A voice suddenly sounded, and it immediately caused a clamor. "Yeah, Miss Han's mood is obviously bad these days. She even stared at Tan Xiao's seat many times during class. I reckon that Miss Han can't wait to drive this guy out of the class. I've seen arrogant people, but I've never seen such an arrogant one." He came back as if nothing happened, but Miss Han was angered by him. "He's really annoying. A rat's poop stinks a pot of porridge. What bad luck. Why is this guy in our class? If I were Miss Han, I'd directly take a broom and drive him out. Ignorant and incompetent." Tan Xiao's hearing was extremely sharp, and he could clearly hear the discussion of every student in the class. However, he didn't care. Mediocre people were mediocre, and there was no point in saying more. Just like that wise saying, "The world slandered me, deceived me, humiliated me, laughed at me, belittled me, despised me, hated me, and lied to me. How to deal with it? Just endure it, let it be, avoid it, endure it, respect it, and ignore it. Wait a few years, and you'll see how it turns out." Tan Xiao liked this saying very much. If you bicker with a fool, you'll also become a fool. He didn't want to be a fool, so he directly chose to ignore it. "Boss, you're here." Yuan Chuling finally noticed Tan Xiao's arrival, and immediately stood up with a face full of excitement. Tan Xiao didn't expect that Yuan Chuling would have such a big reaction. He patted his shoulder, hinting him to sit down, and then sat on his own seat. However, what puzzled him was that Cheng Yannan, who was sitting in front of him, turned around and asked in a low voice that only the three of them could hear, "Tan Xiao, were you the one who killed those organ traffickers?" Tan Xiao pretended to be confused and asked back, "What do you mean? Why don't I understand?" Cheng Yannan frowned and said, "Wasn't it you? My big sister said that it was a young man, and you've been absent from class for the past few days. I thought you were the hero who helped the weak and eliminated the evil for the people. Have you read too many martial arts novels?" Tan Xiao said with a smile. Cheng Yannan's pretty face blushed as she hurriedly turned around. Yuan Chuling glanced at Cheng Yannan's back. Then he approached Tan Xiao and whispered with a grateful expression, "Boss, thank you." Tan Xiao stared blankly for a moment before he suddenly understood and whispered, "You know about it?" Yuan Chuling nodded and said, "Mom told me everything. I knew it was you who did it according to her description. Boss, I'll keep this friendship at the bottom of my heart. In any case, I'll be your follower in the future. You can't get rid of me. Go to hell. Tan Xiao cursed with a smile. Amidst the laughter, the classroom quieted down again. Han Qinggu, the teacher in charge of Class 10, entered the classroom with a cold face. When she saw Tan Xiao, she immediately said in a deep voice, "Come out, Tan Xiao." Tan Xiao raised his hand to touch the bridge of his nose. He could tell from Han Qingwu's harsh tone that she didn't come with good intentions. Glancing at Yuan Chuling, whose face was full of sympathy, Tan Xiao stepped on Yuan Chuling's foot under the table and walked outside amidst Yuan Chuling's screams of pain. In the corridor, Han Qingwu's face was gloomy as she stared at Tan Xiao. She didn't speak for a long time. As time passed by, Tan Xiao finally couldn't bear it anymore and broke the silence. He forced a smile and said, "Miss Han, you called me out in a hurry the moment you saw me. Don't tell me that you want to see flowers on my face?" Upon hearing it, Han Qinggu suddenly got angry and angrily said, "You still have the nerve to smile and have a glib tongue in front of me? Believe it or not, I'll deal with you immediately. Tell me, why did you lie to me a few days ago? It's fine that you skipped class, but you even made me personally escort you out of school. That's simply outrageous." Tan Xiao's face was full of black lines. He originally thought that Han Qinggu was angry at him for skipping class, but he didn't expect that she would take it to heart that he made her escort him out of school. Because he was in the wrong, Tan Xiao smiled embarrassedly and said, "Well, Miss Han, there's a reason for it. I left in a hurry at that time, and didn't even have time to say goodbye to you. It's indeed my fault. You have a big belly and a big heart. So please don't lower yourself to the level of an honest student like me. You have a big belly and a big heart." Han Qinggu rolled her eyes at Tan Xiao and almost said those contemptuous words out loud. He's an honest student? If he were an honest student, then there would be no dishonest student in the world. Which honest student would dare to blatantly skip class? What's more hateful is that he even dared to let the head teacher escort him to skip class. Well, since you said there's a reason, I'd like to hear it. What's the reason that makes you skip class so naturally? Han Qinggu didn't intend to let Tan Xiao go. She thought about the grievance she felt in her heart these days, and felt that it was necessary to give Tan Xiao some eye drops. Now there was not much time left before the college entrance exam. She must ensure that Tan Xiao would review his homework well and get a good result in the exam. Chapter 73. Miss Han, when you went to the supermarket to buy water, I happened to meet an acquaintance. That acquaintance was suffering from a serious illness. It just so happened that I know a bit of Chinese medicine, so he pulled me away. I've been treating him for the past few days. Finally, the heavens won't disappoint those who persevere, and I managed to cure his illness yesterday. Tan Xiao had long thought of a countermeasure. His face didn't blush, nor did his heart skip a beat when he lied. Han Qinggu angrily said, "Nonsense. Even if you're going to treat someone's illness, you don't need to be in such a hurry, right? That's not right. When did you learn Chinese medicine? I think you're just running your mouth. You can't believe a word of it." Tan Xiao cried out that he was wrongly accused. "Miss Han, a man of his word has always been true. Even if I deceive the world, I won't dare to deceive you. If you don't believe me, I'll give you his phone number. You can directly call him and ask him." "Really?" Han Qinggu was skeptical this time. Tan Xiao straightened his chest as he said with a resolute and decisive tone, "It's more true than real gold. That's right. If I tell you his name, you might have heard it. He's called Qin Zhizhong, a businessman. Also, I have a witness. You should have heard of Long Hanwen, right? The Long Group is his family's." Han Qinggu rolled her eyes. Just a moment ago, she was skeptical about Tan Xiao's words. But in the blink of an eye, that trace of trust vanished into thin air. Qin Zhizhong? Long Hanwen? Of course, she had heard of these two people. Not only her, but 99% of the people in the entire Star City had heard of these two people. But who was Tan Xiao? How could an ordinary high school student possibly know such a high and mighty figure? However, she called Tan Xiao out because she wanted to vent the resentment in her heart and correct Tan Xiao's learning attitude. Therefore, regardless of whether Tan Xiao was spouting nonsense or not, She didn't intend to pursue the matter any further. Tan Xiao, I can't be bothered whether what you said is true or not. In any case, you better remember this. In the last 3 days before the college entrance examination, I will invite many teachers in the school to come up with a set of exam papers for you to simulate the exam. If you don't do as well as you did last time, the school might cancel your college entrance examination qualification. As expected, results speak for themselves. Tan Xiao snickered in his heart and repeatedly issued military orders to Han Qinggu. If you don't have a diamond, don't do porcelain work. With his level, he was naturally not afraid of a mock exam. Back in the classroom, Tan Xiao saw Yuan Chuling winking at him, his eyes full of ridicule. Boss, after you skipped class that day, did you send a message to Miss Han? What was the content? Making Miss Han blush in front of the whole class? That day. Tan Xiao thought for a moment, and then couldn't help laughing. Looking at Yuan Chuling's gossipy face, he secretly shook his head, and no longer paid attention to him. To cultivate the heavenly art of cosmic genesis, to reach the second stage of the skin polishing stage, a lot of medicinal materials were needed, among which several precious main medicinal materials were not found yet. Therefore, Tan Xiao could only put aside his cultivation and strive to collect all the medicinal materials in the shortest time possible. In terms of making money, he had already cast a long line, waiting for the big fish to bite the bait. As long as Tang Xia agreed, he believed that with his 2 formulas of skincare lotion and scar removal cream, he could absolutely help him make a lot of money. Subsequently, he sorted out the things that needed to be done recently. Tang Xiao, you damn poor bastard. What the hell did you do to my parents? A thunderous roar resounded from the classroom's door. Immediately after, Su Xiangfei rushed toward Tan Xiao with the speed of a 100-meter sprint. Although he had seen how fierce Tan Xiao was, he couldn't care less about it at this time. He remembered that when he was at home, his father was furious and smashed the home appliances, and his mother was sitting on the sofa with tears on her face. He couldn't wait to peel off Tan Xiao's skin and pull out his tendons and cut him into 8 pieces. Yuan Chuling suddenly looked up. His eyes instantly stared. Just as Su Xiangfei was about to pounce in front of Tan Xiao, he stood up and kicked Su Xiangfei, sending him flying several meters away and heavily hitting the desk. "Eh!" A pig-slaughtering scream came out of Su Xiangfei's mouth. Tang Xiao frowned as he looked at Su Xiangfei, whose forehead was broken from kowtowing and struggling to stand up. Then he said indifferently, "Su Xiangfei, if you're sick, then quickly go to the mental hospital to have a look. Don't provoke me if you're not sick. I can't afford to provoke your arrogant and despotic parents, nor do I care about them. So, take them to the hospital, and you'll know what's wrong with them." Su Xiangfei's eyes seemed to be able to spurt out fire. He glared at Tan Xiao and roared, "It must be you. You bastard. You must have done something. Otherwise, my dad wouldn't have smashed things and scolded you at the same time. Tell me, what did you do to my parents? Else, I'll fight you to the death." "Fight you to the death?" Tan Xiao sneered. "Relying on you? You framed me. If it weren't for me being soft-hearted, I'm afraid you would have been in prison by now." Cheng Yinnan suddenly stood up from her seat. She looked at Su Xiangfei's ferocious face and said with a light bell-like voice, "Su Xiangfei, it seems that my sister was the one who solved this case. I've heard from my sister that it was indeed you and your sister who framed Tan Xiao. Also, we're in the classroom. I hope you don't make a scene here. Otherwise, the school will definitely cancel your college entrance test qualification once the matter gets out of hand." Su Xiangfei's face instantly flushed red. He didn't expect that Cheng Yinnan would unexpectedly jump out to speak for Tan Xiao at this time. Moreover, that embarrassing matter had unexpectedly been made known to the whole class through Cheng Yinnan's mouth. What did it mean to be ashamed? At this moment, Su Xiangfei was having such a feeling. At this moment, he hated Tan Xiao, Cheng Yinnan, as well as that Yuan Chuling who had just kicked him. If looks could kill, perhaps he would have already killed those 3 people 1,000 times. For a moment, all the students in the classroom suddenly burst into an uproar. "Oh my God! Is that true or false?" Su Xiangfei actually framed Tan Xiao? I used to think that Tan Xiao was the black sheep of the herd. Never did I expect that Su Xiangfei is the one with a belly full of evil tricks. One may know a person's face but not his heart. I really didn't expect that Su Xiangfei could actually do such a shameless thing. From what they said, it seems that Tan Xiao and Su Xiangfei's families know each other. Could it be that there is some enmity between the two families? I didn't expect that I would actually misjudge him. I used to think that Su Xiangfei was a good person. But now, I truly understand his character. Even if I want to associate with him in the future, I must guard against him. Su Xiangfei is really a scheming bitch. At this time, a beautiful figure appeared at the classroom's entrance. She had a gorgeous face and a perfect figure. Coupled with her fashionable dress, her beauty was so captivating. Su Xiangfei, however, didn't notice that he was already in a state of shame and indignation at the moment. His burning eyes moved away from Cheng Yannan as he glared at Tan Xiao and roared, "Surname Tang. You always fucking hide behind a woman. What kind of hero are you? Fight me if you have the ability." A man who hides behind a woman is indeed not a hero. But a man who can arouse this Kong Xia's interest doesn't belong to this category. Kong Xia walked into the classroom and instantly attracted everyone's eyes. She came before Su Xiangfei with a haughty and full queen-like demeanor and spoke again. "I'll correct your mistake. Being a hero doesn't mean fighting and brawling. I think those who use their fists to solve problems are either forced or stupid. Which category do you think you belong to?" The anger on Su Xiangfei's face froze as he foolishly looked at Kong Xia, whose beauty was not inferior to his class teacher, Han Qinggu. His mouth open, but he didn't know what to say. Kong Xia glanced at Su Xiangfei before she turned to look at Tan Xiao. She extended her hand and chuckled. "It's our first time meeting. I'm pleasantly surprised to see your age." Tan Xiao shook her hand and calmly said, "I didn't expect that the legendary gold manager, Miss Kong Xia, would be so beautiful. This is not the place to talk. Let's go somewhere else and talk." "Okay." Kong Xia shrugged her shoulders and said. Tan Xiao didn't look at Su Xiangfei again. His blatant disregard made Su Xiangfei feel uncomfortable. After leaving the classroom, Tan Xiao saw the class teacher, Han Qinggu, holding a thick stack of documents. "Tan Xiao, are you going to skip class again?" Upon seeing Tan Xiao coming out of the classroom, Han Qinggu suddenly felt as though once bitten by a snake, twice shy, as she immediately shouted. Tan Xiao looked a bit embarrassed, especially since Kong Xia was following behind him. Kong Xia, on the other hand, looked at Tan Xiao with a strange expression. She then looked at Han Qinggu and suddenly pursed her lips into a smile. This was the first time she saw Tan Xiao, but she felt that this young man who was 5 or 6 years younger than her was very interesting. After walking a few steps forward, Kong Xia extended her hand to Han Qinggu and said with a smile, "Are you Tan Xiao's class teacher?" "I'm Kong Xia, Tan Xiao's friend. I have something to discuss with him. I don't know if it's convenient for me to give him a vacation. I'll only need 2 hours at most." Han Qinggu looked at Kong Xia and then looked at Tan Xiao. She really couldn't figure out what was going on recently. Why so many people were looking for Tan Xiao. Just a moment ago, the principal called her to the office and forcefully asked her to give Tan Xiao a week off. What was most difficult for her to accept was that she had to come forward and deceive Tan Xiao's mother. She had to tell Tan Xiao's mother that Tan Xiao would go to another city to participate in the subject competition. "Hello. Since you have something to do, then go." Kong Xia slightly nodded and took the lead to walk away. Tan Xiao said with a smile, "Miss Han, then I'll go. You can't consider me skipping class this time. Get lost." Han Qinggu suppressed the peculiar feeling in her heart and scolded with a smile. Tan Xiao chuckled, just as he brushed past Han Qinggu. His footsteps slightly paused for a second, and he quickly whispered, "Miss Han, you're actually more beautiful than Kong Xia. That's what I think." After saying that, he chased after Kong Xia as though he was flying. This stinky brat, he actually dares to flirt with me?" Han Qinggu was at a loss whether she had to laugh or cry. She snappily rolled her eyes at Tan Xiao's back as she turned around and walked toward the classroom. Chapter 74. At the Starbucks cafe, Tan Xiao and Kang Xia were sitting face to face. Neither of them spoke first, and were observing each other. Tan Xiao didn't like to drink coffee, so he was holding a cup of water. Looking at Kang Xia casually stirring the coffee with a spoon, Tan Xiao directly turned his head to look outside the window. Kang Xia's hand that was stirring the coffee suddenly stopped. Her brows slightly furrowed, and then quickly stretched out. She found that she couldn't see through Tan Xiao. It was a very strange feeling. So strange that even she herself felt it was inconceivable. One must know that she had entered the society very early. She had been working hard in the business circle for 7 or 8 years, and had seen countless people. But there were only a few people she couldn't see through. And those few people were the elites among the elites in the business circle, the rich and powerful. Tan Xiao. Kang Xia finally couldn't help but call out. Tan Xiao turned his head and calmly said, "I thought Miss Kang came to Star City from thousands of miles away just to see me." Pfft. Kang Xia couldn't help but laugh. She shook her head and said, "You're a very interesting young man. You're much more interesting than I expected. To be honest, I'm interested in you." Tan Xiao said with a smile, "You're still young, so don't look at me with that kind of eyes. Also, I advise you not to be interested in me, else you'll regret it." Kang Xia stared blankly for a moment and then asked with interest, "Why would I regret it?" Tan Xiao said, "There's a rumor that once a woman is interested in a man, she won't be far from falling into a man's tender embrace. I don't want you to fall in love with me. I just want you to work for me and make money for me." Ha ha ha. Kang Xia couldn't help but laugh and tears almost came out. "Interesting. It's really interesting. Tan Xiao, regardless of whether we can reach a cooperation agreement or not, I'll make you my friend." Friend? The smile on Tan Xiao's face disappeared without a trace, and was replaced by a gloomy expression. In the 10,000 years in the immortal realm, if it wasn't because he trusted his friends too much, how could he have ended up in such a miserable state? His tone was much more indifferent as he said, "I don't need friends, I only need subordinates. If that's what you're planning to do, I advise you to take it back." Kang Xia's smile froze. She looked at Tan Xiao with a strange expression. After a long while she slowly said, "All right, I'll take your advice. Now let's talk. What ability do you intend to use to make me your subordinate?" Tan Xiao said straightforwardly, 3 aspects. Number 1, I won't restrict you. Number 2, I have the skills. Number 3, you can make money by following me and realize your ambitions. Weak spot. This was Kang Xia's weakness, and Kang Xia had no reason to refuse in every aspect. However, she was not a person who would easily compromise. Staring at Tan Xiao with a deep gaze, Kang Xia asked, "As far as I know, Mr. Tang hasn't registered a company. Besides, I haven't verified the effect of the product yet." Tan Xiao took out 2 small porcelain bottles from his pocket and placed them on the table in front of Kang Xia. He then calmly said, "One is a bottle of skincare lotion, and the other is a bottle of scar removal cream. You can take it back to test the effect. The result will be out in a week. As for the registration of the company, I really haven't done it yet. If you need it, it should be done in a few days." Kang Xia directly put away the 2 porcelain bottles and asked, "How much is the registered capital?" "I don't have any money now." Tan Xiao shook his head. "Are you kidding me?" Kang Xia looked at Tan Xiao with an expression of disbelief. "You have no money, yet you want to register a company? You even boasted that you can help me realize my lofty ambitions?" "I can't say that I don't have any money," said Tan Xiao. "I've already sold 5% of the shares for 20 million yuan. However, I hope that you'll be the one to help me register the company and be the one responsible for managing it later." 5% of the shares? Sold for 20 million yuan? Kang Xia was dumbfounded. She suddenly felt that she had heard a big joke. He didn't even register the company, yet he could sell the shares? And he even sold it for such a sky-high price? "Mr. Tang, if you're so insincere, then I don't think we need to talk anymore. What I need is a real boss, not someone who talks big and only knows how to brag." Tan Xiao was silent for a moment. He then took out his mobile and dialed Long Jingyu's number. "Brother Tang, are you looking for me?" Long Jingyu's voice came out of the phone. I need your 20 million investment funds now. If you can send the money to the Starbucks near Xingqing number 1 high school within half an hour, I'll agree to invest in the company. Otherwise, I'll look for another shareholder. All right. Long Jingyu directly hung up the phone. Kong Xia looked at Tan Xiao with an astonished expression. Sending 20 million yuan in half an hour? Is this a joke? Tan Xiao was well aware of Long Jingyu's strength, let alone sending 20 million yuan in half an hour. Even if he was given 10 minutes, he could still send the money. However, the person who came was probably one of his men, who was very close to him. Time fleeted by. In the blink of an eye, 20 minutes had passed. Kong Xia looked at the unhurried and silent Tan Xiao. Yet a sense of expectation arose in her heart. If someone could really send 20 million yuan in half an hour, it would prove that Tan Xiao was not boasting. It could even prove that he was very capable. At this moment, a well-dressed middle-aged man ran all the way into the coffee shop. After looking around, he shouted, "Which one of you is Mr. Tan Xiao?" Tan Xiao waved his hand. He got up and looked at the middle-aged man who ran over. "I'm Tan Xiao. Are you sent by Long Jingyu?" The middle-aged man respectfully said, "Yes. Chief Long is on the way to Yang City. He won't be able to catch up in half an hour. So he sent me to send the money to you. Mr. Tang, please take this bank card. There's 20 million yuan inside. The password is on the back of the card." Tan Xiao took the bank card. After sending the middle-aged man away, he directly put it in front of Kong Xia and lightly said, "You can check the money in this bank card yourself." Kong Xia quickly took out her mobile. After quickly checking it, the expression on her face became very interesting. There was disbelief and a bit of surprise on her face. After a long while, she slowly handed the bank card to Tan Xiao and solemnly said, "Mr. Tang, you've proven your ability. I've tested these 2 cosmetics, and they have a very good effect without any side effects. I think I'll agree to join you." Tan Xiao didn't take the bank card, but calmly said, "I'm very confident in my products. I'll send the formula to your mailbox via a short message. Take this 20 million yuan as the startup capital. If the effect is good, I hope you can fulfill your promise." "You trust me that much?" Kong Xia was surprised. Tan Xiao said, "If you doubt someone, don't use him. And if you use him, don't doubt him. This 20 million may be an astronomical figure in the eyes of many people, but it's just a small amount of money in my eyes. I think it's a good deal to exchange this small amount of money for the first test of you." Kong Xia raised her thumbs up and praised, "Those who achieve great things don't bother with trifles. I really hope that these 2 cosmetics have the effect you said. In that case, I can work under you. Last question. Aside from the initial investment, how much additional funds will you add later?" Tan Xiao was silent for a moment and slowly said, "I don't know. I don't know." Kong Xia looked at Tan Xiao with a strange expression. She suddenly felt that Tan Xiao was like a wolf with nothing to gain. After hesitating for a moment, she smiled and said, "Since Mr. Tang can't answer my question, then I'll change my question. If I finally join you, what kind of treatment can I get?" 10% of the shares, replied Tan Xiao without hesitation. "Only 10%. Kong Xia was surprised. "Only 10%, said Tan Xiao calmly. Kong Xia shrugged her shoulders and said with a smile, 10% then. I just hope that you won't kick me out when the scale of the company increases in the future. I don't have time to manage the company. I need capable people to work for me, said Tan Xiao. I understand, Kong Xia said with a smile. Since everything has been said, then I'll take my leave first. Tan Xiao nodded. You're not going back to campus? Kong Xia asked doubtfully. Tan Xiao smiled and said, I've already learned what I need to learn in campus. Staying here is a bit boring. The environment here is good, so I want to relax. Kong Xia couldn't help laughing and said, It seems that the time I asked for leave for you is not enough. That's right. Ha ha ha. With Kong Xia's departure, Tan Xiao knew that he had won her over. Next, he could hand over the registration, establishment, and construction of the company to Kong Xia. Coupled with Long Jingyu's help, the early stage should be very smooth. However, he was a bit depressed when Kong Xia asked him about the additional funds. If Gong Dalong can really help me apply for leave, and can hide it from my mother, then I can consider going with him. On one hand, I can help Jiarui Dao, and on the other hand, I can get some money back. Tan Xiu secretly thought. Ring ring ring. The ringtone of his mobile interrupted Tan Xiu's thoughts. When Tan Xiu grabbed his mobile and saw the caller ID, he suddenly felt a headache. The caller was Han Qingwu. There was still half an hour before the time to apply for leave. Is she afraid that I'll run away again? After thinking about it, he still chose to answer. Hello, is this Tan Xiu? Your mother has come to campus. You'd better hurry up. Han Qingwu's voice came from the phone. Tan Xiu's complexion changed as he hurriedly asked. Miss Han, why did my mother go to campus? Han Qingwu said. I don't know the specifics. It seems to be because of your uncle. In short, you'll know when you come back. Also, Su Xiangfei is your cousin, right? He seems to have a deep hostility toward your mother. Damn it! Tan Xiu cursed in his heart. Su Xiangfei hated him, so of course, he had a deep hostility toward his mother. He was worried that Su Xiangfei would do something to hurt his mother before he went back. Chapter 75. Tan Xiu's speed was very fast. When he rushed back to campus, he found his mother sitting in the office, accompanied by his class teacher, Han Qingwu, who was chatting with her. Seeing this situation, Tan Xiu's hanging heart slowly relaxed. He was thinking whether he should find someone to protect his mother in secret. What if he provoked a powerful enemy one day, and they couldn't retaliate against him, and turned around to retaliate against his mother? Mom, why did you come to campus? Tan Xiu looked at his mother and curiously asked. Upon seeing her son's arrival, Su Lingyun immediately stepped forward to pull his hand and hurriedly asked. Xiu, Mom has something urgent to talk to you about. What did you do to your uncle's family? The husband and wife came to our restaurant today, crying and kneeling, asking for your forgiveness. What the hell is going on? Tan Xiu was silent for a moment and then said, Mom, I went out to buy things a few days ago and met Su Shangwen and Zhang Meiyan. They humiliated me the moment they met, and even used their connections to get the school to expel me. A friend of mine was also with me at that time. My friend's family runs a business, which is 100 times more powerful than Shangwen Real Estate. Because my friend spoke up for me, he was insulted by Su Shangwen. What we didn't expect was that my friend's father happened to pass by and suddenly flew into a rage, wanting to teach Su Shangwen a lesson. If my guess is correct, he must have dealt with Su Shangwen. So he came to beg you, wanting me to speak up for him. Su Lingyun's complexion greatly changed. An angry expression appeared on her face as she angrily said, How can Su Shangwen do this? No matter what, you are still his nephew by blood. How can he treat you like this? Son, don't worry. If he dares to use his connections to get the school to expel you, I'll find him. Beside him, Han Qingwu also had an angry expression on her face. She recalled the attitude of some of the school's leaders towards Tan Xiu, and understood some of Su Shangwen's actions. Immediately she said, Su, big sister, don't worry. As long as I'm in school, no one dares to bully Tan Xiu, and no one dares to kick him out of school. Su Lingyun said gratefully, Thank you, Teacher Su. I've heard about what happened. Thank you for taking Xiu in. Our Xiu is a very well-behaved child. It's all my fault for not being capable enough to make him suffer. Han Qingwu held Su Lingyun's hands and said kindly, Please don't say that. If Tan Xiu hadn't saved me a year ago, he wouldn't have had a car accident. This is what I should do. Su Lingyun already knew that her son had saved Han Qingwu, but she was still very grateful. After a long while, she turned her head and looked at Tan Xiu saying, Son, what should we do now? Your uncle, the husband and wife are still staying in our restaurant, and don't want to leave. Tan Xiu sighed inwardly. After all, Su Shangwen is my mother's blood brother. My mother is kind-hearted and can't stand Su Shangwen's insistent pleading. I'm afraid she doesn't want to see Su Shangwen fall into such a miserable end. What do you think, Mom? Su Lingyun hesitated and didn't know what to say for a while. After all, Su Shangwen's way of doing things was too ruthless. If he wasn't her son's classmate, Her son would have been humiliated and might even lose his studies. But blood is thicker than water. For a time, she was caught in a dilemma. Tan Xiao helplessly said, "Mom, I'll let it go this time. I'll tell my classmate to make his father stop. However, if Su Shangwen dares to humiliate us again in the future, I won't let him go so easily." Although Tan Xiao said so, he was sneering inwardly. He only told Yuan Zhengxian to stop, but he didn't tell Long Wenhan and Chen Zhizhong to stop. It was meaningless to talk about familial affection with people like Su Shangwen and his wife. Su Lingyun hesitated and said, "Xiao, do your words count?" Tan Xiao nodded affirmatively and said, "This matter happened because of me, so my words will definitely count. Don't worry, you'll understand when you go back to the restaurant." In the end, Tan Xiao pacified Su Lingyun and persuaded her to go back. At the door of the office, Han Qingwu looked at Tan Xiao with a strange expression and meaningfully said, "Tan Xiao, you didn't tell the truth to your mother, did you? If your classmate's father really wanted to punish Su Shangwen because his son was humiliated, I'm afraid you won't be able to intervene. Be honest and tell me what happened." Tan Xiao forced a smile and said, "Miss Han, it's not good for a woman to be too smart." Han Qingwu proudly smiled and said, "Who said it's not good for a woman to be too smart? It's not the era where a woman without talent is a virtue. No, you brat, don't change the topic and tell me what happened." "Well, since you're so curious, I'll tell you." Tan Xiao helplessly said, "Do you remember I told you that I met the Endless Virtue Pharmaceuticals big boss, Chen Zhizhong? I really cured his illness, so he owes me a big favor. At that time, when Su Shangwen humiliated me, he happened to bump into him. So he was very angry and wanted to make Su Shangwen pay the price." "Is it really like that?" Han Qingwu was surprised. "Is it really Chen Zhizhong?" Tan Xiao rolled his eyes and said, "I'm going to take a leave tonight to see Chen Zhizhong. Do you want to come with me?" "You want to take a leave again?" Han Qingwu angrily said. Tan Xiao forced a smile and said, "Miss Han, I don't have a class at night, so I'm just going to talk to him. You can't make things difficult for my mother, can you?" Han Qingwu felt relieved, and the anger on her face quickly vanished. She said, "If that's the case, then I'll give you a night's leave. Remember, don't be late for class tomorrow morning." "Yes." Tan Xiao nodded with a smile. He originally had an appointment with Chen Zhizhong tonight, and was thinking about how to leave. He didn't expect that his mother would come to the campus and help him a lot. "That's right. The principal looked for me today and asked me to give you a week's leave," said Han Qingwu. "Tell me honestly, what's going on? Did he really agree?" Tan Xiao was surprised. "More than agree," Han Qingwu angrily said. "He even told me to make up a lie to deceive your mother, saying that you're going to participate in a subject competition in another city. Judging from your words, you already know the reason. Tell me quickly what happened." Tan Xiao's mind was racing as he grinned and said, "Someone's teacher is sick, and it's very serious. I have some medical skills, don't I? So that person asked me to go to another city to treat his teacher. You also know that I don't have time to go to another city. In order to deceive him, I told him that I don't have time, and I can't explain it to the school and my mother. Who would have thought that he would go to the principal and ask you to make up a reason to hide it from my mother? You're not lying to me, are you?" Tan Xiao raised his palm and said seriously, "I swear in the name of my future wife that I'm not lying to you." "Uft." Han Qingwu rolled her eyes at Tan Xiao and scolded him with a smile. "How old are you, brat? You're already thinking about your future wife. All right, leave your mother to me. Remember, you only have a week, starting from today." Tan Xiao forced a smile and said, "It seems that my leave tonight is in vain. You deserve it." Han Qingwu smiled happily. As Tan Xiao returned to the classroom, he saw Su Xiangfei glaring at him with an angry face. Tan Xiao just glanced at him and directly ignored him. He returned to his seat and looked at Yuan Chuling, who was diligently studying. He suddenly curiously asked, "Hey, how come you've changed today? I've never seen you so diligent before." Yuan Chuling grinned and said, "Hee hee, that's because I was muddle-headed before. You know, Tan Xiao, actually my parents' divorce is fake. Although they've applied for a divorce certificate, their relationship is better than before." What's going on? Tan Xiu was confused. I don't know about the specifics. Yuan Chuling shook his head. My mother told me that they have their own difficulties in applying for a divorce, so she won't tell me about it for now. Wait until I graduate from college and have the ability to survive in society. Then she'll tell me the whole story. I gave up on myself before because I didn't understand them. I won't do it again. Tan Xiu suddenly understood. He patted his shoulder and said with a smile, Do you want me to help you? How will you help me? Yuan Chuling was confused. There's only 1 month left before the college entrance test. I'm now racing against time to study, so that I can get a higher score in the college entrance test to make my parents happy. Tan Xiu said with a smile. Wait for me for a week. I'll teach you my learning experience a week later. As long as you follow my teaching, your grades will definitely improve by leaps and bounds. Really? Yuan Chuling was ecstatic. Tan Xiu confidently said with a smile. Haven't you seen my previous results? If I want to, I can easily get the first place in the school. At this moment, Cheng Yinnan, who had been eavesdropping on Tan Xiu, and Yuan Chuling in the front row, suddenly turned her head and said, Tan Xiu, you can't favor one and discriminate against the other. We're all classmates. Since you can impart your learning experience and skills to Yuan Chuling, it shouldn't be a problem for you to teach me too, right? Tan Xiu couldn't help laughing and said, All right. Since you helped me today, I promise you. Cheng Yinnan nodded with satisfaction. Suddenly, she rolled her eyes and said, Can I take 2 more female classmates? Think about it. Our class has a few students with excellent results in the college entrance test. It will be very beneficial for our teacher in charge, Miss Han. Tan Xiu hesitated for a moment before nodding and said, All right. But the number can't be too many. Tan Xiu didn't have a good impression of his classmates in the class. In his opinion, these students had become stupid from studying. Whatever others said, they would believe it and join in the commotion. If it wasn't for Cheng Yinnan's words, and if it wasn't for Han Qingwu's benefit, he really didn't feel like teaching them. Yuan Chuling said, Eldest brother, you said you want to wait for a week? Why don't you start now? Tan Xiu said with a smile, I'll leave the school this afternoon after school. I've asked Miss Han for a week's leave. You want to ask for a week's leave? Yuan Chuling involuntarily exclaimed. In a flash, the whole class turned their heads and looked at Tan Xiu and Yuan Chuling. In the eyes of those students, Tang Xiu was an ignorant and incompetent student. They didn't know what kind of fucking luck he had last time. But he got the first place in the cohort. Unexpectedly, he was becoming less and less like a student, skipping classes and asking for leave. Chapter 76. A 6-month-old child's face could easily change. The sun was shining brightly in the afternoon. But as the evening approached, the sky began to drizzle. The entire Southgate town was shrouded in a hazy misty rain. Vaguely, a few lights lit up one after another. In the villa, Tan Xiu was sitting cross-legged on the balcony of his bedroom, silently sensing the situation inside his body. The 9 stars in his body had become more and more dazzling after several days of cultivation. Even though he was sitting cross-legged, the feeling of power was still like a surging wave that transmitted to his limbs and 5 bones. He was very clear that the practice of the skin-strengthening stage was imperative. After he returned from helping Jiaorui Dao, he would go all out to find the herbs and spirit stones. If it was really difficult to find them in a short time, then he could only ask Chen Zhizhong for help. The path of cultivation is full of hardships and dangers, but I'm bound to ride the wind and break through the waves and set foot on glory. In the past, he was rarely in a predicament of lacking cultivation resources. But the resources on Earth were scarce. If he wanted to cultivate the heavenly art of cosmic genesis, then he must plunder all the available resources, even if it was extremely difficult. He had the ambition of an eagle soaring in the sky, courageously going against the current. Facing all the difficulties, he firmly believed that they would not stump him. With his perception, he immediately sensed Chen Zhizhong's arrival. In the hall on the first floor, Chen Zhizhong was surprised as he looked at the villa's decoration. He found that even the place he lived in was not as good as this villa. Suddenly, he couldn't help but envy Long Hanwen. After all, his son had such foresight and accurate investment. He was definitely an elite of the commercial street, an outstanding talent. "You're here." Tan Xiao came down from the stairs and said with an expressionless face. Chen Jizhong's heart tightened as he respectfully greeted and called out, "Master." This time, Tan Xiao didn't refute him. Instead, he came to the living room and sat on the sofa calmly saying, "I have received several registered disciples, so I know that teaching disciples is troublesome. Therefore, I don't have much time to waste on teaching disciples. Before you worship me as your master, I have a request." "Please say it," Chen Jizhong hurriedly said. He didn't expect that Tan Xiao had received several disciples at such a young age. If so, wouldn't he have several senior brothers in the future? "No hurry," said Tan Xiao. "I want to ask you a few questions first. If your answers satisfy me, then you will be my registered disciple from today onwards. If I'm not satisfied with your answer, go back to whence you came. Even what you see and hear here today must not be leaked." Chen Jizhong's mind moved and he said, "Please ask." "I will definitely answer truthfully." Tan Xiao pointed upwards and said, "Do you believe that there is always someone better out there? Is there a higher existence above our earth?" Chen Jizhong said, "Of course. The vast universe was boundless. Who knows how many civilizations there will be, how many brand new worlds?" Tan Xiao shook his head and said, "I'm not talking about this universe. I'm talking about space. Just like the world in those Xianxia stories, there was the human world, the demon world, the immortal world, and the divine world. Do you believe that these higher-level spaces exist?" Chen Jizhong pondered for a moment before slowly replying, "I don't know." Tan Xiao asked, "If there is, can you accept it?" Chen Jizhong nodded without hesitation. There are all sorts of strange things in the boundless universe. More broadly, the devil realm, the immortal realm, and the god realm were not out of the question. If there really is one, I can naturally accept it. Tan Xiao asked, "Next question. How much do you know about cultivators?" "Cultivators? Could it be?" His mind turned quickly and he seriously said, "Cultivators are legendary figures in my eyes. What I know about them comes from fairy tales, and I've never encountered them in reality. However, I've heard of 2 places with such old immortals, but it's hard to say whether it's true or not." "Where are they?" asked Tan Xiao. "Qinghai and Exi," Chen Jizhong replied. Tan Xiao nodded silently and said, "If what I teach you won't make you achieve much, will you still want to worship me as your master?" Chen Jizhong said without hesitation, "As long as I can practice martial arts and make progress, I'm willing to worship you as my master." Tan Xiao pointed to the door and said, "I already know your answer. You can go now." Chen Jizhong was stunned and instantly felt cold all over. He didn't understand what was wrong with his answer. Why did Tan Xiao refuse to accept him as a disciple? "Can you tell me what I can't satisfy you?" Tan Xiao said, "My disciple doesn't need to practice martial arts. My disciple only needs to have a heart that is not afraid of danger, and has the courage to fight against fate. Learning my cultivation method will always go against the heaven's will. A little carelessness will lead to eternal damnation. To put it plainly, the most important thing to learn from me is to cultivate the heart, followed by the cultivation of the body." Chen Jizhong immediately knelt in front of Tan Xiao and firmly said, "I have that heart. If I can make myself stronger, I'm willing to go against the heaven's will." Tan Xiao gazed deeply at him and watched his firm and resolute face. After a long silence, he nodded and said, "Go get some tea and then kowtow to me." All right, I'll go right away." Chen Jizhong didn't react for a while. After he reacted, he immediately shouted with ecstasy, "Serve the tea. Kowtow." The simplest ceremony of worshipping a master and disciple only took 2 minutes to complete. Tang Xiao motioned for Chen Jizhong to sit on the opposite sofa, and then slowly said, "Anyhow, according to your age, your achievements in this life won't be too great even if you follow me to cultivate. It's very difficult for you to ascend to the heavens, and the chances of you becoming a supreme immortal are slim. However, since you've become my disciple, I'll naturally make you live longer and become stronger." "Ascend to the heavens?" The paragon of immortals. Chen Jizhong's pupils violently contracted, and his face was aghast. That's right, Tan Xiao said in a deep voice. I'm a cultivator, not someone who practices martial arts as you said. There are thousands of paths to the great Tao, but all of them lead to the same destination. I'll teach you immortal cultivation arts, and guide you to step into the path of cultivation. As for how much you can achieve in the future, it's all up to your fortune. Fortune? It was indeed a great fortune. Chen Jizhong was so excited that he wanted to shout out loud, but he didn't dare to act rashly in front of Tan Xiao. He had heard of cultivators, but he had never seen one. Such legendary figures were like towering mountains in his eyes, making him admire and yearn for them. Thank you, master. This disciple will follow your teachings and cultivate seriously. Chen Jizhong knelt in front of Tan Xiao again, and respectfully kowtowed 3 times. Tan Xiao frowned and said with dissatisfaction, You don't need to kowtow to me so easily in the future. I can't teach you much, so you can ask me when you encounter something you don't understand in your cultivation. Shortly after, Tan Xiao randomly picked a cultivation art and imparted it to Chen Jizhong. The cultivation art he imparted might be mediocre in the eyes of those supreme immortals in the immortal world. But in the eyes of those ordinary immortals, it was no different from a legendary supreme divine art. Tan Xiao's present cultivation was too low to instill his spiritual sense, so he could only impart it bit by bit. It took him 4 hours to impart a cultivation art. Alright, I've imparted you the cultivation art. I'll teach you some other knowledge when you really embark on the path of cultivation, such as alchemy, refining, arrays, and so on. But remember, you can't be too hasty in your cultivation. Otherwise, it will lead to instability in your state of mind, and lead to cultivation deviation. I'll follow your teachings, master. Chen Jizhong respectfully replied. Tan Xiao waved his hand and said, Alright, you can go now. Remember, you must never tell anyone about the cultivation art I'm imparting to you today, including your closest relatives. Understood. Chen Jizhong immediately nodded. After Tan Xiao sent Chen Jizhong away, he picked up his mobile phone and looked at the time, only to find that there was an unread message on his mobile phone. After opening it, he remembered that Gong Dalong took his ID number during the day, and said that he wanted to book a plane ticket. He didn't expect that he had already booked the plane ticket, and the departure time was tomorrow morning. I don't know how it feels to fly by plane. Is it like flying on a flying sword? After pondering for a moment, Tang Xiao felt a bit hungry, and went to the kitchen. What made him smile wryly was that the clean and tidy kitchen was empty. Even the fridge was empty. This house doesn't have the taste of home at all. It's better to live with mother. Although the house is small, it has all the essentials and has the warmth of a home. After sighing with emotion, he was surprised to find that there was a menu on the wall behind the dining table. There were all kinds of dishes on it, and it was particularly sumptuous. After looking at it, he realized that the property management office left it for him. They were afraid that he didn't want to go out to eat, and no one would cook for him, so they left a takeout menu. Sure enough, you get what you pay for. For this villa complex, the property management office is really considerate. Tan Xiao let out a faint smile, and called the number on the menu to order a takeout. 20 minutes later, the doorbell of the villa's courtyard rang. When Tan Xiao came outside, he found that the takeout had been delivered, and the person who delivered it was none other than Long Zhonglin. Why are you here? Asked Tan Xiao in surprise. Big bro Tang, I came especially to see you, said Long Zhonglin with an excited face. I just met the delivery man outside the door, so I gave him the money and sent him away. How come I feel that you're like a ghost that keeps haunting me? Tan Xiao said with a helpless expression. You're not enough to follow me during the day, yet you still come to sleep with me at night? Long Zhonglin shook his head vigorously. The excitement on his face didn't diminish. Big bro Tang, I'm looking for you for something else. Do you still remember the prescription you gave me this afternoon? I bought all the medicinal herbs according to the prescription, and then went home to ask the housekeeper to boil it for me. I felt different after taking it. It just so happened that there was a girl who was interested in me, so I tried it. Guess what happened? It was simply a miracle. I persisted for a full 20 minutes. I didn't lie to you. I specifically looked at the time, and 20 minutes was definitely enough. Are you sick? Why are you telling me this kind of thing? Tan Xiao was at a loss whether he had to laugh or cry as he cursed. Long Zhenglin shook his head again and said, Big bro, I saw a strong business opportunity in that prescription. So, I pulled up my pants and hurriedly came to discuss with you about making a fortune. Business opportunity. Chapter 77. Tan Xiao looked at the excited Long Zhenglin in front of him with a puzzled expression. He really didn't understand how a prescription for invigorating the kidney and strengthening yang energy could contain such a huge business opportunity. Tell me about it. Tan Xiao sobered up from his daze after a long while and said with great interest. Long Zhenglin pulled Tan Xiao to the living room on the first floor of the villa. After putting the takeout food on the table, he skillfully took out a cigarette from his pocket and lit it up. After taking a deep puff, he began to spit out a lot of saliva. Eldest brother, you're sitting on a treasure mountain, but you don't know it. The effect of the prescription you gave me is unexpectedly good. Just think about it. How many men in the world are troubled by the matter of? How many of them are unable to harmonize with their husband's life, causing their families to be unable to live in harmony? How many women are unable to satisfy their men and end up having an affair? There's an organization that has investigated this issue. According to the statistics of the survey, 75% of men in the world are unable to satisfy their partners. 37% of them can't last for more than 10 minutes. 8% of them are quick shooters and can't last for more than 5 minutes. This survey may not be very rigorous, but the organization has spent 4 years to investigate more than 100,000 adults all over the world and finally came to this conclusion. Long Zhenglin wiped his mouth and excitedly said again, There's no man in the world who doesn't want to show off his masculinity in bed and kill his partner. None, absolutely none. Even homosexuals want to have the image of an Iron Man deeply implanted in their partner's heart. What do you mean? Tan Xiao seemed to realize something as he probingly asked. Long Zhenglin said aloud, Nowadays, the aphrodisiac drugs sold on the market indeed have the effect of restoring a man's masculinity. But those drugs have great side effects on the body. Many people are unwilling to buy those drugs, even if they have to bear the title of incompetent. But the medicine you gave me is different. On one hand, it can nourish the kidney and treat kidney deficiency. On the other hand, it can restore a man's masculinity. This is absolutely a divine tool for making money. Tan Xiao quickly said, This medicine not only has the effect of invigorating the kidney and strengthening yang energy, but it also has great nourishing benefits for women. It even has a little cosmetic effect. Heavens! Long Zhenglin directly jumped up from the sofa. His eyes were bigger than a copper bell. After a while, an angry expression suddenly appeared on his face. He looked at Tan Xiao and roared, Boss, you're wasting God's gift recklessly. Why? Why didn't you tell me about this earlier? Why didn't you give me this prescription earlier? Tan Xiao rolled his eyes at him and said angrily, How long have I known you? Ugh. Long Zhenglin's breathing stagnated, and the anger on his face immediately vanished. With some awkwardness he smiled and said, Yes. It's all my fault for knowing you too late. If I had known you earlier, I'm afraid I would have fallen for you long ago. Tan Xiao laughed and scolded, Don't talk nonsense. You came all the way here to find me. I believe you must have the idea of using this prescription to make money. Tell me, I'll see if I can help you. Long Zhenglin immediately said, Eldest brother, do you have any way to make the medicinal soup taste better? For example, those drinks sweet and creamy. Tan Xiao's eyes lit up, and his heart suddenly palpitated. Although he was not very familiar with the domestic beverage market, he could fully imagine how huge it was. He had heard that several beverages or dairy products occupied half of the market share, and its big bosses had successfully squeezed into the ranks of the country's super rich and powerful. If this kind of product that could be compared to medicine and could also be used as a beverage was pushed to the market, once it exploded in the whole country, what kind of sales share would it have? How amazing would the profits be? If it could be promoted to the whole world. Then Tan Xiao stared deeply at Long Zhenglin, as all kinds of thoughts constantly churned inside his mind. After being silent for a long time, he slowly said, "Your suggestion is very good, very good. As long as the promotion channel is perfect, I'm afraid it will cause a huge sensation once the product hits the market, and the profits will also be very terrifying. Long Zhenglin, how do you plan to cooperate with me?" Long Zhenglin probed. "I want some shares, and the management rights will be handled by your people, eldest brother." Tan Xiao didn't answer him, but asked, "I want to know, how much ability have you learned in the Long Group all these years? If you were asked to control a huge business group, would you be able to do it?" Long Zhenglin's expression froze. With a bit of embarrassment, he shook his head and said, "I can't. Even if it's an ordinary company, it'll be very difficult for me to manage it. If it were my big brother, he could control a small company. But a super large company would be very difficult even for my big brother. Such being the case, I'll hand over the management of the company to someone else," said Tan Xiao. "But I can let you invest in it, and if you want, you can also participate in the management of the company. May I know how much you're going to invest in the early stage? I can ask my dad for money," Long Zhenglin quickly said. "As for the shares, I'll be satisfied if you give me 5%. As for management, I'm not good at it. At most, I can help with the odd jobs." Tan Xiao shook his head and said, "Don't look for your dad. How much can you get if you invest your own money?" Long Zhenglin said with an awkward expression, "I'm quite poor, so it's not a problem for me to take out a few million. But if it's more, I'm afraid I'll have to sell my private property and luxury cars. If I sell them all, I should be able to get 20 to 30 million. You invest 3 million, and I'll give you 10% of the shares," said Tan Xiao. "But you must not easily spread the fact that I'm the boss of the company." Long Zhenglin curiously asked, "Can I say it if my dad and brother ask?" "Up to you," Tan Xiao calmly said. Long Zhenglin rubbed his hands and said with a smile, "All right, I got it. It seems like I don't need to ask about the food and drinks if I follow Big Bro. Big Bro, I've decided to follow you in this life. Even if you want to dump me, I won't do it." "Fuck off," Tan Xiao cursed with a smile. Shortly after, Tan Xiao drove Long Zhenglin away. When the villa was quiet, he began to think about the new product's formula in his mind. He needed to ensure the new product's quality, while also making it taste good. How could he check the formula of the other drinks? Tan Xiao was a bit tangled inside. After thinking about it, he decided to ask someone, and immediately dialed Kong Xia's cell number. "What's up, Tan Xiao?" Kong Xia's sleepy voice came out of the phone. Tan Xiao stared blankly for a moment. He looked at the time and suddenly woke up. Suddenly, an awkward expression appeared on his face. After all, it was almost 2 o'clock in the night. "Sorry, I forgot that it's time to sleep now. I'm looking for you because there's something I want to consult you about." "What is it?" Tan Xiao asked. "You're very experienced in running a business. What I want to ask is, if I want to know the formula of the other drinks, what do I need to do?" "Find Ms. Du," Kong Xia said snappily. "Who's Ms. Du? Does she know the formula of those drinks?" Tan Xiao's eyes were filled with deep confusion, as he couldn't help but ask. Kong Xia quivered. She was at a loss whether she had to laugh or cry as her voice came out again. "Come on. Are you still a good youth from the New World? You don't even know who Ms. Du is? Baidu. You can search on Baidu, and you'll be clear about it. However, the formulas on the internet, as well as the formulas on the product bottles, were not very complete. After all, the formula of any product is a trade secret of the owner." Tan Xiao said, "It doesn't matter. I got it. Thank you." Kong Xia asked, "Do you want to do a beverage business?" Tan Xiao didn't conceal it as he said, "I do have such an idea, but I don't have the formula yet, so I want to study it." Kong Xia was speechless. She couldn't help but mutter inside, "Do you think it's that easy to study the formula? If it's that easy, there would have been countless drinks in the world." Suddenly, she recalled the 2 cosmetic formulas Tan Xiao gave her. She couldn't help but think, could it be that he also came up with those 2 cosmetic formulas randomly? In an instant, Kong Xia's heart sank. Tan Xiao didn't know that his phone call had turned Kong Xia's mood into a mess, to the point that she couldn't sleep all night. He hung up the phone and was ready to search for other beverage formulas on the internet. But he was dumbfounded as he remembered that he didn't have a computer. Even his mobile phone didn't have internet connection. Forget it. Haste makes waste. I'll buy a computer when I have time. It won't be too late to search when I have internet. Tan Xiao shook his head. He put away all his thoughts and prepared to sleep. After all, he had to follow Gong Dalong to Jingmen Island tomorrow, so he must have enough energy. Jingmen Island was a large isolated island in the Southern Sea. After decades of development, it had now become a bustling international metropolis and an important transportation hub in Southeast Asia. The flourishing tourism industry had driven the economy of the entire Jingmen Island to advance by leaps and bounds. Jingmen Island Airport. Jia Yele was restlessly standing at the airport's exit. His eyes were constantly looking at the passengers coming out. At the same time, there was deep regret in his heart. But at the same time, he also hoped that his eldest senior brother could invite the gambling grandmaster that his father had praised. At this moment, he knew that his father was gambling with those bastards who cheated him. Perhaps, his father's lost capital would increase if he was a minute late. If that grandmaster can't do it, I'm afraid we'll never be able to make a comeback in this lifetime. His heart was full of bitterness. Yele! A shout came from the corner behind the stream of people. Jia Yele looked toward the source of the voice. A pleasantly surprised expression suddenly appeared on his face. He quickly walked to greet him. Eldest senior brother, you're finally back. Where's that gambling grandmaster? Chapter 78. Tan Xiao, who was standing next to Gong Dalong, could see that Jia Yele's eyes only glanced at him, and then looked around to find the gambling grandmaster. A bit of coldness arose in his heart. In particular, his words made Tan Xiao a bit dissatisfied. This Jia Yele in front of him actually judged people by their appearance. Tan Xiao finally understood why he was tricked by others. He had countless ways to trick such a person. Pa Gong Dalong also saw through Jia Yele's thoughts. He slapped his head and snappily said, "He's Grandmaster Tang, the gambling grandmaster I specially invited." Jia Yele rubbed his head as his vision fell on Tan Xiao. With just a glance he called out in disbelief, "Eldest senior brother, are you kidding me? He's so young, and he doesn't even look older than me, no? How can he be more powerful than my dad? How could he be a gambling grandmaster? Idiot." Tan Xiao secretly cursed inside. He was completely speechless toward Jia Yele. Gong Dalong was infuriated by Jia Yele. If it wasn't because he was in front of Tang Xiao, he really wanted to slap this idiot junior brother to death. The first time he saw Tan Xiao, he indeed had contempt in his heart. After all, the impression Tan Xiao gave him was too young. However, in the contest between Tan Xiao and Su Shangwen, although he had helped Tan Xiao, he didn't play much of a role. But Long Hanwen and Chen Jizhong, the two rich and powerful people of Star City, had stood up to help Tan Xiao. It seemed that they intended to express their goodwill to Tan Xiao. This made him suddenly wake up and understand the truth, that one couldn't judge a book by its cover. Gong Dalong glanced at the indifferent expression on Tan Xiao's face. He then pulled Jia Yele out of the crowd and came to a remote place tens of meters away. Without hesitation, he fiercely slapped Jia Yele's face and angrily glared at him and said, "Remember me. Judging a book by its cover is a taboo for professional gamblers like us. Master Tang won master at the gambling table. Do you think Master would lie to you? If Master Tang didn't have the ability, do you think Master would treat him as a life-saving straw? You're not doubting Master Tang. You're doubting your father." Jia Yele covered his burning cheeks and looked at Tan Xiao, who had followed him here. He immediately broke out in a cold sweat. How could he not know that he had committed the biggest taboo of professional gamblers? How could he not know that he had judged people by their appearance? With a bit of regret, he looked at Tan Xiao and bowed deeply, saying, "Grandmaster Tang, I was rude just now. Please be magnanimous, and don't let me lower myself to the same level as this person who has no foresight. I'm sorry, I hope you can forgive me." Tan Xiu was originally very unhappy with Jia Yele, but seeing him admit his mistakes so easily, and even apologize straightforwardly with a tone and expression full of sincerity, Tan Xiu had a whole new level of respect for him. As the saying goes, there is nothing more virtuous than being able to correct one's mistakes. Although Jia Yele had some flaws in his character, he could be regarded as someone who could be taught. What about your father? Tan Xiu nodded slightly and calmly asked. Jia Yele carefully took the suitcase from Tan Xiu's hand and hurriedly said, "My father is at the gambling table. Since today is the deadline set by the other party, he must continue to gamble with them. Otherwise, my mother's relic will be sold off by them." Tan Xiu secretly shook his head. It seemed that this Jia Ruidao had sunk deep into the pit. It was said that when beating a snake, one should hit the weak spot. Others had seized Jia Ruidao's weak spot, so he had no choice but to succumb. Rhythm. Tan Xiu was very clear about the meaning of this word, especially the word rhythm. He knew what it meant to gamblers. If a professional gambler could control the rhythm of the entire game, he would undoubtedly win big. On the contrary, once he lost the control of this rhythm, it would be extremely difficult for him to win. Jingmen Island Paradise Club. All the regulars in Jingmen Island, as long as they were keen gamblers, there was no one who didn't know them. It was not in a building, but inside a luxury cruise ship at Jingmen Island's port. Rumor had it that the big boss behind the scenes of the Paradise Club was Ouyang Lulu, the eldest daughter of Jingmen Island's first family, the Ouyang family. Of course, this was an illegal business, so she had distributed a lot of shares. Otherwise, without a safe haven, it would be difficult for those jealous people to get rid of it. At this moment, in a spacious and bright office inside the Paradise Club's luxury cruise ship, Ouyang Lulu warmly entertained her two classmates from the capital. Da Hong Pao, produced in Wui Mountain, is a type of oolong tea with excellent quality. It's a special famous tea in the country. Its shape is tight, and it has a greenish-brown color. After brewing, it will have a bright orange color with red and green leaves. The most outstanding quality of this tea is its fragrant orchid fragrance. The fragrance lasts for a long time, and the rock charm is obvious. Its efficacy is innumerable. A smile hung on the corner of Bai Tao's mouth as he watched Ouyang Lulu elegantly carrying out the tea-making process. Then he continued, "This top-grade Da Hong Pao is something that's hard to find even with 1,000 gold coins. My uncle once spent a lot of effort to buy a few batches from some big tea merchants in the southern province. It seems that classmate Ouyang is very capable. You can even get your hands on this top-grade tea." Ouyang Lulu said with a smile, "I say, old classmate, is it interesting to tease me? But I didn't expect you to be so proficient in the tea ceremony. I'd like to consult you when I have time later." Bai Tao was startled. He quickly waved his hand and forced a smile. "I was just showing off my slight skill in front of Lu Ban. Please don't consult me. If you really want to consult, you can consult others. I know someone's tea ceremony skill is very powerful. Even what I know is imperceptibly influenced by what I've seen and heard." "Who is it?" asked Ouyang Lulu with a puzzled expression. Bai Tao glanced at Chu Yi and chuckled. "Far away on the horizon, but close at hand." Ouyang Lulu was exceptionally smart. She immediately turned to look at Chu Yi and said with an astonished expression, "Chu Yi, it turns out that the tea ceremony expert is you. What's wrong? You're still playing low-key in front of your old classmate?" Chu Yi couldn't help laughing. "I used to think that my tea ceremony skill was an expert among my peers. But after seeing your tea-making skills, I'm sincerely convinced. There's always someone better than you out there. Classmate Ouyang, you've given me a good lesson today." Ouyang Lulu said with a charming smile. "Modesty makes people fat. I reckon that you'll become a big fatty in a short time." "Ah, that's right. Are you two very free recently? How did you come to Jingmen Island?" "Originally, we went to Star City to find that Long Jingyu brat. We made an appointment to go to Thailand to play together. But I didn't expect that brat to change his mind at the last minute and give up the opportunity to go out for a big project." Ouyang Lulu said with a smile. "Although I've never seen Long Jingyu, I've heard his name many times. Especially the two of you. Every time you meet, you always mention him in my ear." It seems that I must see this famous young Master Long, if I have the opportunity later. I want to see what kind of outstanding person he is, to be worthy of such a deep friendship between the two of you. Bai Tao said with a smile. Of course he's amazing. He's not much worse than us. Ouyang Lulu couldn't help laughing. Are you praising him? Or are you praising the two of you? Chu Yi's expression suddenly moved as he said, Lulu, Long Jingyu is really outstanding. Among the younger generation, there are only a few talented youths who are more powerful than him. However, our trip to Star City this time turned out to be even more interesting. To be exact, it's a more interesting person. Who is it? Ouyang Lulu asked in surprise. Chu Yi said, I don't know the specifics, but I know that he's a young man. The most inconceivable thing is that he's actually a high school student. You can't imagine that it's that high school student who helped Long Jingyu win a big project. Even the incomparably arrogant Long Jingyu actually worships that high school student. Ouyang Lulu said with surprise, Long Jingyu actually worships a high school student? Are you kidding me? Bai Tao said, We're absolutely not kidding. I can really feel that Long Jingyu really worships him. When we were chatting and drinking tea with Long Jingyu, that young man called Tang Xiu called Long Jingyu and asked him to help him find a professional manager. Long Jingyu's attitude was simply even more intimate than when he was treating his biological brother. Ouyang Lulu was confused. Why would a high school student want to find a professional manager? Bai Tao said. He said that he's preparing to set up a company, but he doesn't have the time to manage it. So he asked Long Jingyu to help him find a professional manager. You don't know, but we happened to be there at that time. So Chu Yi gave him a rotten idea. He asked Tan Xiu to invite Kong Xia. Old classmate, have you heard of Kong Xia's name? TSK. I really want to see if that kid can invite Kong Xia. Ouyang Lulu rolled her eyes and scolded with a smile. You two are really not good things. Who is Kong Xia? She's a super elite from the world's financial center, Wall Street. Countless big shots in the business world want to take her as their subordinate. After countless efforts, all of them failed. And you want a high school student to invite her? Isn't this an international joke? Bai Tao chuckled and said, Hee hee, it's just for fun. Chu Yi's expression suddenly moved. He grabbed his mobile and dialed a number. After the other party picked up, he asked, Is there any news about the information I asked you to investigate? Yesterday, Kong Xia went to Star City alone. Her purpose is unknown. What? Chu Yi suddenly felt that there was something wrong with his ears. Kong Xia went to Star City. What did she go to Star City for? Suddenly, there was an indescribable complex emotion in Chu Yi's heart. It was like a surging wave, rolling endlessly inside his heart. Ouyang Lulu looked at Chu Yi's strange expression and asked curiously, What's going on? Chu Yi hung up the phone and looked at the four people's gazes, saying, I was curious, so I sent someone to investigate Kong Xia's whereabouts. I just got the answer that Kong Xia went to Star City yesterday. Her purpose is unknown. She went to Star City. Bai Tao directly jumped up from the sofa and exclaimed in disbelief. Kong Xia went to Star City because of that Tan Xiu? How is this possible? Chapter 79. Tan Xiu. This name was deeply engraved in Ouyang Lulu's heart. She was very clear about the importance of a person that Chu Yi and Bai Tao had in mind. Not to mention that this person was worshipped by Long Jingyu, so he absolutely must not be underestimated. Furthermore, if the legendary gold manager Kong Xia really went to Star City alone for him, then he was really amazing. Of course, regardless of whether Kong Xia would work for him or not, as long as Kong Xia personally went there, his means were already heaven-defying. I seem to be more interested in this Tan Xiu than Long Jingyu. Ouyang Lulu smiled as she handed the brewed tea to the two of them. Bai Tao suppressed the shock in his heart as he took the tea and said, I have the same feeling. That Chu Yi really aroused my interest. If he's really amazing, I don't mind having another friend. Chu Yi shook his head and said, I'm afraid it's not easy to become Tan Xiu's friend. If I'm not mistaken, Long Jingyu and Tan Xiu are not real friends when we were in Star City. Even if Long Jingyu gave him a villa and spared no effort to help him, There are some people in this world who can easily become friends without any conflicts of interest. But once they are mixed with interests, wanting to become real friends is as difficult as ascending to the blue sky. Ouyang Lulu let out a shallow smile and said, "Forget it. Let's not talk about this. You two came to Jingmen Island. Don't tell me that you want to talk about old times with this old classmate of yours. Tell me, what's so fun about it? I can join in." Bai Tao and Chewy glanced at each other. Then Chewy chuckled and said, "I got a call 2 days ago. One of my little brother's men recently became a banker in Jingmen Island and cheated a kid. As a result, the young one was beaten, and the old one came forward. Because of this, my little brother won a jade pendant of extremely high quality from the old man. You also know that I'm very interested in jades and jadeite business, so I came here to have a look." Ouyang Lulu said with a smile, "I know about this. The one who got cheated is called Jiarui Dao. He used to be a famous professional gambler and could barely be considered a master. Unfortunately, this time he met a difficult opponent, one of the top 3 golden fingers in Macau, Yi Taifu. Not only did he lose all his money, but he also borrowed hundreds of millions of yuan from his old friends. I reckon that he's about to lose everything again." Chewy said with a smile, "I have no interest in gambling, but I'm interested in that jade pendant." Ouyang Lulu looked at the time and said, "They happen to be gambling today. Do you want to go and have a look?" "Oh, right. Since you are here, you should know that the bet between Yi Taifu and Jiarui Dao is going to take place in our Paradise Club, right?" Bang bang. Someone knocked on the door, and a middle-aged man walked into the room. "What is it?" Ouyang Lulu casually asked. The middle-aged man said, "Boss, the next bet is between Yi Taifu and Jiarui Dao." Jiarui Dao suddenly called a halt and left our Paradise Club. He said that the bet will be rescheduled to tomorrow. Ouyang Lulu's brows pricked as she looked at Chu Yi and said with a smile, "It seems that you won't be able to see it today. Let's go. I'll treat you to dinner tonight." All right. Chu Yi and Bai Tao didn't care about the bet, so they weren't disappointed. Jingmen Island. Outside the Jarvis 5-star hotel's entrance, Jiarui Dao's face was full of excitement. His eyes were constantly looking at the street in the distance. Next to him, his second disciple Zhang Taichun also had a face full of expectation. Their savior would arrive soon. They were very clear that the upcoming arrival of their benefactor would be their last life-saving straw. Master Tang should be arriving soon, right?" Zhang Taichun raised his wrist and looked at his watch. Jiarui Dao said, "Yes. He should have arrived by now. Could it be that there was an accident on the road?" Zhang Taichun's eyes narrowed as he pointed to the street and asked, "Master, that should be the car, right?" Jiarui Dao looked at his second disciple's arm and suddenly said with a pleasantly surprised expression, "Yes, that's your junior brother's car. He should be coming back." The car stopped. Jiarui Dao sprinted to the car and opened the door. "Brother Tang." The moment Jiarui Dao saw Tan Xiao, he excitedly called out. However, his address made his 3 disciples look at each other in dismay as they blushed with shame. After all, even the youngest among them, Jia Yele, was 5 or 6 years older than Tan Xiao. This address directly lowered their seniority. Tan Xiao nodded and said, "Weren't you gambling on the table? Why did you come back?" Jiarui Dao said with a bitter expression, "I lost almost all my money. I must leave some money for you to gamble with the other party tomorrow. So I called for a halt midway and hurried back." Tan Xiao said, Let's go inside." In the presidential suite on the top floor of the Jarvis Hotel, Tan Xiao and Jiarui Dao sat on the sofa in the hall, while Jiarui Dao's 3 disciples stood behind him. Every time Jia Yele's eyes swept over his father, a trace of fear could be seen on his face. "Brother Tang, I can't thank you enough for your kindness. You came from thousands of miles away to help me. I, Jiarui Dao, will always remember this gratitude in my heart. If you need me in the future, even if it's a mountain of blades or a sea of flames, I, Jiarui Dao, will never frown." Jiarui Dao said with a sincere expression. Tan Xiao said, "Give me the opponent's information." Jiarui Dao immediately nodded to his second disciple, Zhang Taichun. A moment later, the information was handed over to Tan Xiao. While Tan Xiao was reading the information, Jia Ruidao said. Our opponent is called Chen Kai, a famous playboy in Jingmen Island. This time, he invited Yi Taifu with a huge sum of money. Not only my disciples, but I also lost a lot of games. Yi Taifu is one of the top 3 gambling masters in Macau. He's also a famous cheat. I thought that even if I'm not stronger than him, I'm not much worse than him. But alas! While listening to Jia Ruidao's narration, Tan Xiu looked at the information in his hands. 10 minutes later, he knew the whole thing like the back of his hand. He also had a general understanding of the opponent's situation. A very difficult master to deal with. Tan Xiu secretly sighed inside his heart. He looked at Jia Ruidao and said, I can help you gamble with the opponent, but I have a condition. Jia Ruidao said, Please say it. Tan Xiu said, First of all, I want to make it clear that I don't know how to gamble. I think you're clear about this. After all, when we were gambling, I secretly learned your skills. If I really lose, you can't blame me. Jia Ruidao seriously said, I absolutely won't. Tan Xiu said, If I win, I don't care about your capital, but I want half of all the money I win. Jia Ruidao said without hesitation, I only want my wife's belongings. All the other money is yours. Tan Xiu shook his head. I said, I only want half. Jia Ruidao hesitated for a moment. Seeing that Tan Xiu didn't seem to be lying, he nodded and said, I agree. Tan Xiu looked at Jia Ruidao's 3 apprentices and immediately said, My condition is finished. You also know that I don't know anything about gambling. Apart from dice, I don't know anything about other types of gambling. So today, you need to explain all types of gambling to me, and also teach me those skills. Alright. Jia Ruidao also had this intention, so he happily agreed. Immediately, Jia Ruidao ordered his 3 apprentices to find a variety of gambling tools. There were many types of gambling. Jia Ruidao focused on teaching Tan Xiu, dice, 5-card stud, pai gao, mahjong, blackjack, golden flower. You can play dice and it's very good. I won't teach you this one. Now, the first thing I'll teach you is blackjack. This gambling method is also the most common gambling method. I've been gambling with Yi Taifu for the past few days, and almost all of them are blackjack. Generally, blackjack is used from 1 to 8 cards. The dealer will give 2 cards to each player. One card is facing up, which is called the name card, and the other is facing down, which is called the dark card. In total, it will be dealt. Ordinary gamblers may only rely on luck to win or lose, but a real master gambler completely relies on a variety of skills. To put it bluntly, those skills are almost all a smokescreen, used to deceive people. As the saying goes, 9 out of 10 gambles are deceiving people. Jia Ruidao explained while demonstrating to Tan Xiu. Along with the constant changes of his hands, the skillful shuffling of the cards with lightning speed, made Tan Xiu secretly exclaim in admiration. 360 professions. Each profession has its own master. If one's gambling skill can be practiced to the acme of perfection, one can absolutely make a fortune. Of course, the premise is that one must have the opportunity to win money, and have the life to spend it. The second is 5-card stud. The third is pai gao. The fourth is time passed bit by bit, and in the blink of an eye, it was already evening. Jia Ruidao and Tan Xiu didn't eat. They even forgot the feeling of hunger. Between the two of them, one was enjoying teaching, and the other one was enjoying learning to his heart's content. Even at night, they didn't pay attention. The last one is golden flower. Jia Ruidao grabbed a new deck of playing cards. After drawing out the joker and joker, he looked at Tan Xiu and said, "This way of playing." Tan Xiu waved his hand to interrupt him and said, "I know how to play this game because I've seen others play it. You just need to tell me the technique of golden flower." Jia Ruidao knew that Tan Xiu was formidable. He had seen it before, and today, it was an eye-opener for him. He taught Tan Xiu the gambling skill, and Tan Xiu quickly learned it. Even his proficiency in it also improved at lightning speed. Therefore, he didn't have the slightest anger toward Tan Xiu for interrupting him. Instead, he was secretly happy. There are two main aspects to pay attention to when playing golden flower. First, deception. To quote from The Art of War, the art of deception Playing is actually a psychological game. Some people get small cards, but they can rely on the deception to win big. Some people get big cards, but they are afraid that the other side will get bigger, so they give up. Second, secretly take pictures and change cards. A lot of powerful experts have hidden cards on their bodies. This kind of hidden card can't be found by others, but it depends on the other party's ability to hide it. The other one is hand speed. In gambling, hand speed plays a crucial role. For example, this golden flower. Chapter 80. Jia Ruidao skillfully shuffled the cards, and then gave 3 dark cards to Tan Xiao and himself. Then, he put the rest of the cards aside and continued. After the dealer has finished dealing the cards, he will put the cards on the table in front of him. I once heard of an expert who could use the cards in his hand to shoot out and hit the remaining cards in the deck. With a very fast speed, he would hit out the cards he needed, and his original cards would be left in the remaining cards. However, a gambler who can do this is definitely a god of gamblers. For example, there is such a god of gamblers in the Las Vegas casino. Suddenly, Jia Ruidao patted his forehead and said in annoyance, "I forgot a crucial factor. That is, memorizing and calculating the cards. Your eyes must always stare at the dealer's hand and follow his rhythm. You must remember and calculate the position of each card. Especially when you cut the cards, you must be accurate." Tan Xiao followed Jia Ruidao's explanation and touched his 3 cards. When he saw the numbers on the cards, his brows suddenly wrinkled. His eyes swept over the remaining cards that Jia Ruidao had just put down. His hand moved as fast as lightning, and in an instant, he had already finished changing the cards. Even smaller? Tan Xiao secretly sighed inside. He realized that he didn't carefully look at the cards that Jia Ruidao shuffled. He also didn't remember each card's face and position. Seeing that Jia Ruidao didn't notice him changing the cards, he immediately clamped a card and changed it again. 4 of spades, 5 of hearts, 6 of hearts straight. Tan Xiao flipped the cards and said, "It's your turn." Jia Ruidao said with a smile, "My luck is good. Mine." As he spoke, his hand quickly swept the remaining cards in front of him. But almost in an instant, Tan Xiao quickly and accurately grabbed his wrist. As for the card that Jia Ruidao was holding in his hand, he did not exchange it. "Don't play with your hand speed in front of me." Jia Ruidao's expression turned dumbfounded. He looked at Tan Xiao's hand in disbelief, and the corner of his mouth twitched a few times. He smiled bitterly and said, "It's really hard to believe. How can your eyes be so sharp? How can your hand be so fast?" My hand speed was fast, partly because of my talent, and partly because of my decades of practice. "But you," Tan Xiao lightly said, "I practice martial arts, so I need to be observant and alert. My punches are as fast as lightning, and my palms are as fast as light. Unless it's someone who's faster than me, I'll easily find out if they cheat in front of me." Jia Ruidao was overjoyed and said, "That's great. I really didn't expect that Brother Tang is a martial artist. After today's lesson, my worried heart can finally be at ease. To be honest, it's a great loss for the gambling industry that you're not a professional gambler, Brother Tang. I feel that if you can focus on practicing your gambling skills, you can become a famous gambling master in at most 3 to 5 years." Gambling grandmaster? Tan Xiao secretly rolled his eyes and sighed. He had nothing better to do, so he became a gambling grandmaster. Not to mention that he didn't have the slightest interest in gambling. He needed to cultivate and enhance his strength to return to the peak of the immortal world. He couldn't wait to race against time, so he didn't have the time to waste. Grumble. Suddenly, a sound came from Jia Ruidao's stomach. Tan Xiao smiled indifferently and said, "It's very late now. Let's go out and eat something first. I've already memorized all the gambling techniques you taught me. I'll practice them again tonight." Jia Ruidao had exhausted his mind and spirit on the gambling table during the day, so he was in a tense state. After he came back, he taught Tan Xiao gambling techniques. Seeing Tan Xiao's extraordinary talent that could easily accept and learn almost every gambling method, Jia Ruidao was overjoyed. His mood changed from great sorrow to great joy, causing him to feel a burst of exhaustion at this moment. Upon hearing Tan Xiu's words, he naturally raised his hands in agreement. Brother Tang, my disciple should have booked a private box. Let's go now. After leaving the presidential suite, Jia Ruidao's eldest disciple, Gong Dalong, was waiting outside the door. Upon seeing the two of them coming out, he immediately respectfully said, Master Grandmaster Tang, I've booked a private box in the Everlasting Feast Hall. Second junior brother and little junior brother are already waiting there. Good. Jia Ruidao nodded in satisfaction. He looked at Tan Xiu and quickly said, Brother Tang, the Everlasting Feast Hall is Jingmen Island's specialty restaurant. It's a very high-class place. If you're not a member, you simply can't enter the door. Yeah, Tan Xiu nodded. He didn't have a favorable impression toward those restaurants and clubs in the country that easily required one's status and title. It was because the slogan of this new era was, everyone is equal, and build a harmonious society together. However, to set up such a threshold was to divide people into 3, 6, or 9 ranks. If it was in the world of immortal cultivation, Tan Xiu might have been accustomed to it. But in this new era, it made him feel like he was building a monument to his chastity. Sitting in the Mercedes-Benz, passing through the bustling city, the car changed direction on a small road near the coastline. On the two-lane road in the lush forest, apart from the dim yellow street lights, there was hardly a single car in sight. Occasionally, a few security guards on sensor cars would pass by them silently. Gradually, the sound of the waves seemed to come from the sky, and as the car moved forward, the sound became clearer and clearer. Finally, lights that looked like twinkling stars appeared in front of Tan Xiu. Tan Xiu looked at the lights and was shocked. He cried out involuntarily, Water block dragon lockere? Jia Ruidao was confused and asked, Brother Tang, what did you say? Tan Xiu took a deep breath, trying to calm his breathing. He turned to look at Jia Ruidao and asked, Is this the Everlasting Feast Hall? How much do you know about this restaurant? Jia Ruidao shook his head and said, Very few. The owner of this restaurant is definitely a mysterious dragon whose head and tail are hard to be seen. Legend has it that the Everlasting Feast Hall has existed since the beginning of Jingmen Island's development. Only its scale has continued to expand. That's right, there's also a special case. What special case? Tan Xiu asked. Jia Ruidao lowered his voice and said, You can dine in this Everlasting Feast Hall. Even if it's a sky-high price, the food here is absolutely delicious. The wine here is a bejeweled nectar that makes people salivate. Those who come here, aside from those with money and status, there is another kind of people who can enter. That is martial arts practitioners. Martial arts practitioners? Tan Xiu was confused by Jia Ruidao's words. Jia Ruidao explained, Yes, they are martial arts practitioners. The most puzzling thing is that every martial arts practitioner who comes here can eat and drink for free, as long as they can pass through the 1,000 revolution array set up by the restaurant owner. 1,000 revolution array? Tan Xiu's heart shook violently as his complexion instantly turned pale. His mind couldn't help but recall the days in the immortal world. He recalled the martial arts field in the towering palace, and the figure of the little girl in white fluttering in the wind. In the dark, that young and tender voice lingered in his ears. Master, Yenner has tried to break through the 1,000 revolution array 3,600 times. How come she still can't break through? Did you act shamelessly and set up the little golden man in the koan position? Master, Yenner has finally broken through. I'm very happy. You said that I've grown up after breaking through the 1,000 revolution array. Has Yenner grown up? Master, Yenner has personally brewed this 100 flowers pure wine. Please have a taste. Master. Tan Xiu's eyes were filled with a glimmer of sparkling and translucent light. 6,500 years. It had been 6,500 years. His favorite disciple, the one who helped him find the 10,000-year ice soul, had rushed alone into the dead sea of Netherworld. Since then, there had been no news of her. He had been sad for 6,500 years, and vowed that he would never accept a personal disciple again. Impossible. Even though I only taught her the 1,000 revolution array, even though the water block dragon array is my own creation, and I only taught it to her. But this should only be a coincidence, a coincidence. Tan Xiao kept repeating this sentence in his heart. Soon, the Mercedes-Benz car was parked in the spacious parking lot. Jia Yele, who had been waiting for a long time, stepped forward and opened the door. He then looked at Tan Xiao and his father coming out. Dad, Grandmaster Tang, the box has been booked. We're just waiting for you. Jia Ruidao slowly nodded. He looked at Tan Xiao and said, Grandmaster Tang, let's go together. Tan Xiao was silent for a moment and then said, Tell me the box number. I'm a bit bored and want to go out for a walk. Wait for me to get some fresh air. I'll go to the box to find you. This, Jia Ruidao hesitated. Tan Xiao waved his hand and said, Just go. I'll be fine. Jia Ruidao nodded and said, If that's the case, then we'll go in first. Brother Tang, if there's anything, just call me first. All right. Tan Xiao nodded without a word. After sending off Jia Ruidao and his disciple, Tan Xiao identified the direction. He passed through the forest trail, bypassed the fountain square, and went straight to the coastline. The starlight filled the sky, illuminating the sparkling sea surface. Thousands of meters away from the coastline, a lone boat was drifting along with the waves. Tan Xiao's eyes were sharp. He could clearly see that there was a thin figure inside the lone boat. Looking at it, there was a thick sense of desolation and loneliness. Tan Xiao took a deep breath and sat cross-legged on the beach. The great Tao is 1,000 trials and tribulations, cutting through thistles and thorns. The heavens do not move, my heart is tranquil. Myriad sects returned to the heart. The great sorrow and great joy clear heart incantation surged in Tan Xiao's heart. The heaven and earth spiritual chi from all directions roared and rushed over, as though a clear spring was washing his rippling heart. 10 minutes later, on the lone boat a kilometer away, the countenance of the gorgeous girl, sitting cross-legged, suddenly changed. A surprised look flashed in her starry eyes, as she quickly turned her head to look at the coastline. She was keenly aware that the heaven and earth spiritual chi around her was unexpectedly rushing toward the figure sitting cross-legged on the shore. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.